higher over everything. All praise to the Most High, man.
Oh man, it's coming again. I need Yeshua's blood because I'm covered in sin. And that's what prayer's about. We battling them demons and we casting them out. Oh man, it's coming again. I need Yeshua's blood because I'm covered in sin. And that's what prayer's about. We be battling them demons and we casting them out. Breathing in deception and exhaling common sense iniquity. In my mouth I need more than a common rinse. From a perspective I appear to be a masterpiece, but these soul ties braided woven like a tapestry. Back to me it's lacking me, but actually it's tracking me. I'm running from temptation cause these demons keep attacking me. A higher gives me power, yeah, something like a battery, but I'm programmed by sin like they built me in a factory. I be doing research cause it's all about them facts to me. I left being a Christian cause I choose to live factually. They reject the law and be transgressing casually in the doctrine that they teach. I'll leave you as a casualty. Oh yeah, it's coming again. I need Yeshua's blood because I'm covered in sin. And that's what prayer's about. We battling them demons and we casting them out. Oh man, it's coming again. I need Yeshua's blood because I'm covered in sin. And that's what prayer's about. We be battling them demons and we casting them out. Sin is in my members, embedded in my flesh. The Ruach contradicts, so it's hard for them to mesh. When I feel convicted, I remember what the scriptures say. Dead to sin, alive to Christ, so righteousness can cast away the flaw of sin. Appalled with sin, but really it's the law of sin. Romans 7:23, Paul's twisted up by wicked men. Yasha's my example, he gave the blueprint, but I'm bounded by carnality, I just need to repent. I make presentations just to share the information. No fake Hebrew Israelites thinking only they are the nation. They twist up the scriptures with faulty application, and the doctrines that they preach says Esau's the Caucasian. Oh man, it's coming again. I need Yeshua's blood because I'm covered in sin. And that's what prayer's about. We be battling them demons and we casting them out. Oh man, it's coming again. I need Yeshua's blood because I'm covered in sin. And that's what prayer's about. We be battling them demons and we casting them out. There have no temptation taking you but such as is common to man. But a higher is faithful, who will not suffer you to be tempted above what ye are able, but will with the temptation also make a way to escape, that ye may be able to bear it. 1 Corinthians 10:13. Blessed is the man that endureth temptation, for when he is tried, he shall receive the crown of life, which the Most High hath promised to them that love him. James 1:12. Submit yourselves therefore to a higher. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. James 4:7. Yeah. Temptation.
You did it, Millhouse.
Elevate your consciousness, transcending expectation. Become one with Elohim, no escape from this simulation. Let go of misery, strip down to the foundation. Gain spiritual enlightenment and mental liberation. The Bible more than words, it's more than just a text. It's metaphysical truth, it's far beyond complex. A melting pot of life, combined within the spirit, is demonstrating his love. That's why the demons fear it. I'm trying to put you on that game, I'm trying to make it known. We live in vessels of the Creator more than we've known. If we look inside ourselves and find a God within, cause once we seek shalom, then our journeys can begin. Yeah. Elevate your consciousness, transcending expectation. Become one with Elohim, no escape from this simulation. Let go of misery, strip down to the foundation. Gain spiritual enlightenment and mental liberation. To tap into your pineal, unlock your essence. rest. The gospel of Hamashiach was more than just a blessing. Awaken good vibrations. Understand your frequency. Meditate to stay in tune with the Most High frequently. It's more to our existence than what we think we know. But if we want to learn, first we gotta want to grow. The first step to salvation is to purify your temple. And obedience to Torah must begin inside your mental. Faith and works go hand in hand, they gotta work in tandem. It's purpose on your life, the Most High doesn't deal in random. Then all of the commandments will start to manifest. Go be the God you meant to be through the Ruach HaKodesh. Elevate your consciousness, transcending expectation. Become one with Elohim, no escape from this simulation. Let go of misery, strip down to the foundation. Gain spiritual enlightenment and mental liberation. Elevate, be one with Elohim. Let go of misery, gain spiritual enlightenment and mental liberation.
Seeking a father, seeking yourself.
All praise to the top. Whipping like I run it from the cops. I ain't gotta worry about no ops. Young David, I stay with the rock. I'm blessed. All praise to the top. Whipping like I run it from the cops.
Shabbat Shalom, family. It's your boy Solemn Prophet here with Professor S and company with the fam. And this is Shabbat Talk. Shabbat Shalom. Hope everybody doing good. Because today, they're going to be a good one. Shabbat Shalom, Sister Leah.
Shabbat Shalom.
All right. We got some folks still coming in here, tuning in. We got some folks still coming into the YouTube. Shabbat Shalom to everybody currently watching on YouTube, everybody in the chat.
Shabbat Shalom.
But y'all know, first and foremost, before we get started with everything, we got to give the Most High his praise. All praises, worship, esteem, and honor goes to the Most High, because he is the reason why we here. He the reason for this platform. He the reason y'all woke up this morning. He put breath in your lungs. He the reason you ain't dead, why you ain't lost your mind, why you still have everything that you have. So definitely grateful to him. And I thank him for being able to, put this lesson together on the topic of today, because it's going to, I believe, really kind of open some eyes and give some understanding and allow us to be more cognizant of how we conduct ourselves on a daily basis. So all praises to the Most High for sure. All right. Shabbat Shalom to Sister Cindy, first in the YouTube chat.
Okay. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom, family. Love
Shabbat
you.
Shalom.
I had to get in there quick.
You was in there. As soon as I opened it, you was right on in there. And Sister Ava was right behind you. Shabbat Shalom to Sister Ava as well.
Yes. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom to Brother Sims, Chief Sims in the building. Good to have you in here, brother. Glad I was able to chop it up with you earlier today. Shabbat Shalom to my beautiful wife.
Hi.
Hey.
Shabbat Shalom to Sister Kaylee. Sister Kaylee in the
Shabbat
building.
Shalom, y'all. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom to Sister Shannon. I see you in the chat. And everybody else, Shabbat Shalom on Facebook, YouTube. And as people trickle in here, I'll definitely give them shout outs. Shabbat Shalom to Planet Yah. Absolutely. Shabbat Shalom. Hey, Ebony, Sister, I will be calling you First Lady. I find that hilarious. And last but not least, Shabbat Shalom.
I'm not that.
My A1, my day one. The guy I go to when I got questions. My man. Shabbat Shalom, my brother.
Oh, I had it muted. Sorry. Shabbat Shalom, bro. Love you, man.
Love you as well. Love you as well. So we're going to get right into it, man. We're going to get right into it. The Torah portion for this week was Numbers 22, verses 2, all the way through chapter 25, verse 9. The book of Micah, chapter 5, verse 6, through chapter 6, verse 8. And then you have Romans 11, verses 25 through 32. And I'm going to play the Parsha in 60 seconds video for that, because I always forget.
Shalom and welcome to Parsha in 60 seconds. Today's portion is from Numbers 22, 25-9. It is called Balak. Balak, king of Moab, contacts the prophet Balaam to come and curse the Israelites. God comes to Balaam and says, "You must not curse that people, for they are blessed." Balaam says no to Balak. Balak raises the offer. Balaam refuses, but God allows Balaam to go with Balak's men. Balaam takes his donkey and departed, but God places an angel in his way. The donkey saw the angel and was scared stiff. Balaam beats the donkey 3 times. God allows the donkey to speak.
Ouch! Why are you hitting me?
Then God allows Balaam to see the angel. Balaam bowed down to the ground. The angel questions Balaam and sends him with the men, instructing him only to speak the word of God. Balaam and Balak go to Karath Huzzah. In the morning, they went up a mountain overlooking the Israelites. They built 7 altars, killed some bulls and rams. Then Balaam went off alone. God appears and tells Balaam he cannot curse. Balaam tries. Balaam ends up with the Israelites. Balaam from top. Balaam. God tells Moses to who were in a tent. 24,000 as a result of their actions.
Do you know the U.S. solar companies now?
Ooh. There's a lot of information. All right. So normally the icebreaker would share his thoughts, but he's in the YouTube chat today. So I'm gonna give somebody else an opportunity to share something that they got from the Torah portion this week.
Well, I think as far as like Balaam going and his donkey and all that, it's very interesting story. Something that a lot of people try to foo away, you know. But it's very interesting. There's some significant things involved in that, but you know, the animals seeing angels, that's something that apparently at the fall we lost a lot of our senses that that we were originally created with, and the animals didn't necessarily lose all those. So you know, you very often, especially people who have pets, will notice that animals seem sensitive to things that we don't even see or perceive or anything, you know. And then beating the donkey, that's how a lot of people would react as things aren't going their way, you know what I'm saying? But we never know when something is actually for our benefit, you know. And sometimes we get mad at situations that actually are for our benefit. If we were to look back at Joseph, right, for example, being sold into slavery into Egypt, and then rising up, and then going to prison, and then rising back up to power from there, you know, all of those things which were seemingly bad at the time were actually for a purpose, you know. And we should not lose sight of the fact that Elohim can turn anything into good, and does for those that love him, you know.
Absolutely. And I'm not the only one that agrees with you.
And so, yeah, whenever things seem to be going wrong, such as Balaam not being able to get his donkey to move, oftentimes something that seems to be going wrong is actually to protect us from things going worse, you know.
Yep. I found it interesting that go ahead, Sister Ava. You're muted. I found it interesting that that the person that delivered the word, that prophesied, that upheld the word of the Most High in regards to dealing with Balak, was somebody who was wicked at heart, wicked in nature, somebody who was dealing in witchcraft and soothsaying and all of those types of things, which is why Balak chose him to go and to curse Israel in the first place. This man had a reputation, right? So he sent for him, right? But even somebody who is dealing with the dark arts and all of those types of things can still be used to give the Most High esteem and understand that He is in control. So when the Most High can take your enemies and have your enemies bless you, that's a different kind of power, right? So that's one of the things that stood out to me. And I'll say my last little bit to transition into the lesson. But go ahead, Sister Ava. The floor is yours. What you get out of the Shabbat talk? I mean, the Torah portion.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, so this Torah portion was so complex for me, and even though I'm probably older than a lot of people in the coalition and the talk that's with us here, I'm very much a babe when it comes to reading and studying the Bible. I always heard people talk about the Torah portion, especially, once I crossed over into hearing more of the truth and who the Hebrews are. And so, stepping away from the religion of Christianity, right? As you're learning. And so for us, when we were doing Shabbat, when we first started out, we were just doing we were reading through the Torah using like the Bible experience. So if you guys know what that is, like a dramatization of the audio Bible. And it's a really good one. They really get different voices into there so you can imagine what they're saying. It's on YouTube called the Bible Experience. And so like the book of Genesis or whatever, each book will take like 5 hours. So we would play that, whole Shabbat, and you're just listening to the whole book, not taking it piece by piece. And so it's when I started joining you guys that I realized why the Torah portion is so important. It's taking one story at a time, one theme at a time, for you to get out of it what Yah is trying to help you understand, little chunks at a time, which I needed. I needed that in my life, is these little chunks rather than just looking at the Bible as a novel to just work your way through. Like, okay, I'm going to read it in a year. Yay, I read the Bible, super Christian, good for you. So that's one thing that I'm really appreciative that you guys are doing this, and that I get to experience this with you guys now to understand why it's so important. I mean, I'll hear people get out into brawls on podcasts talking about, well, they didn't do the Torah portion. It's like, what is so important about this Torah portion? I mean, it's just a Jewish thing. What are they getting into arguments and ending relationships over and kind of whatever, So I'm getting to understand now, and I appreciate now why it's so important. So for the last few, because I only joined you guys recently, it was a lot of sobering. We're going through the laws, and we were hearing how many times we upset Yah and test him and really put him through the ringer. So for me, every time I would hear it, especially because I would listen every day, because I'm more of a listener than a reader, it would really tear me up to the point where I would taste metal in my mouth, just how disgusting we were, and what I'm realizing I am to him every day. Because we get into this thing, how could they do this? Yah was right there. He was right in front of them. He was fire in front of him at night, and he was a cloud by day. How could they be behaving like this? And we talk about it each week recently, where we're talking about how we can't fathom what it was like. This was like, even though they talked about 600,000 men came out of Egypt, we have to remember that that was just Israel. It doesn't account for the women, the children, the animals, the Egyptians, who could have been more than them, that came out of Egypt with them. So you're talking about millions, let's say even just 1 million. 1 million people, and we don't grasp that this is how many people were there. We get to see the condensed version. We get to sit in the front row and see what was going on with Moses. But how I get to understand how people could have easily sinned was that they were not in the front row. They were miles down, getting stories, secondhand stories of what's going on. Hey, what happened today in church? Well, this is what happened, and this is my part of the story, and this is what I understood. And so you have all this trickling down of information, and that's how I see that they could have sinned. They didn't understand. They didn't get to see the beheading of people or the earth swallowing up those three families. So they, maybe that's how all of that sin could have happened and crept in. Now, this Torah portion, when I first started listening to it, was very funny to me. I'm a Gen Xer, and a lot of our comedy tends to have a lot of violence. You think of early days Tom and Jerry and early days Mickey Mouse. We have a lot of violence in that stuff. So for us, that type of stuff is funny. So like when Balak is getting upset with Balaam after taking him out 3 times, and said he claps his hands, and I'm like, they just went all Jamaican on each other. They're like, what the? I told you to curse these people. And then the thing with the donkey, I mean, the donkey is like, why are you hitting? I can't say it right here because we haven't done the talk on profanity yet. But it was just so funny to me how listening to the dramatized Bible, how this story played out and how complex it got. And what made it even more complex, since you guys introduced us to the Targum, Sean was telling me more things. My son was telling me more things about the people in the story. Like Balaam, he's Laban. I was like, what do you mean he's Laban? Meaning Jacob's father-in-law. So the only thing I could really understand from maybe he's from the house of Laban. And I also tend to get into a envious spirit sometimes when I hear that people hear from Yah. I'm like, how is this person who is operating in witchcraft getting so much direct conversation with Yah? And here I am struggling, praying to Yah, wishing that Yah would talk to me directly and tell me to do. I'm like, nope, you don't want that. You don't want the responsibility of Yah talking to you directly because you're just not ready for it. There was just so much to unpack with this one. There's a lot of studying that I want to do with it still. I hope I get the time to do it. And I was going to talk about all the jokes I found in it. But really, what I had to remember was, what is it that the portion is trying to tell me? What am I supposed to take away from it every week that Yah wants me to hear? And I saw the repetitive theme of obedience. That we're to be obedient to Yah. And like even the donkey itself was teaching us obedience. Yes, he has a slave master, but we are to obey Yah. Even no matter what our slave master is saying, if Yah, the donkey was righteous, Yah was going to spare the donkey, even if the donkey walked right where it shouldn't have walked. And he said he would have spared him, but he was obedient and walked away from the angel, trying to protect his master. And there's also another part where they're talking about the Midianites, how they got upset, how there was one guy who brought a Midianite woman right in front of Moses and so on, as was being a disobedient not to take on a woman. And in the Targum, it gets really explicit. It gets to like a rated R movie where it's talking about what happened to that guy because he was disobedient. And I had the question, why couldn't they take on a Midianite? What was so wrong about it? I mean, Moses married a Midianite. And I found that even though I read both the scriptures version and the Targum, that question was not answered. And I had to remember what my dad had told me before, is that you don't have to understand everything all the time. You don't have to have an answer for everything. Take away what you're supposed to learn. And what you're supposed to learn is obedience. They were told not to marry Midianites. It's none of your business why he allowed Moses to marry a Midianite. If you're told not to do it, you're not to do it. And that's it. So for me, why that impacted me so much was, I don't know if you guys remembered a few weeks back when I was confessing how I need to take off weight. At the time, I think I was like 205 pounds. I'm 5'2". And so I'm very overweight. I've always been overweight as far as I can remember. And I knew that I needed to change. Again, part of being grateful, being in the walk with you guys, getting all these things to deal with, right? So I can better myself for you. And I remember I came on here and I said, you know, I need to take off weight, and starting May 1st, I'm going to do this thing. And would you believe that after that declaration, I have had so much more struggle with trying to take off weight. I eat lesser than my son. I'm sure if I showed you guys the time, I'm not trying to starve myself, but just naturally I eat less than most people I know. And yet, and I haven't weighed myself, but I've been getting so uncomfortable in my clothing. It bothers me every day when I put my clothes on. I must have put on 30 pounds. And I checked today and I've only put on 10 more pounds. And I'm like, this is way beyond the weight itself. It is about obedience. You're told to do something and you haven't done it. I hear you talking about how come you're not hearing from ya? How come you're not hearing from you're hearing from ya every time you put on your clothes and you don't feel comfortable. Every time you go and eat that ice cream, you're not supposed to eat because your son is not around to tell you, hey, you're not supposed to be eating that. So if you can't do what you're supposed to do with those small instructions, how you're supposed to expect to talk to you and deal with you like he's dealing with these other people, when here you are being served up instructions and you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. So as you guys know, I don't normally come on here. StreamYard usually gives me problems, but the whole reason I'm sharing all of this and went around all that is to confess that I have been wrong. I've been doing wrong. I want to do better. I'm very glad for the opportunity to meet with you guys every week because it is helping me tremendously in my spirit. Personally, I get to see you guys growing as well. I appreciate the rawness that you guys share each week, not just you and Professor S, but everybody in here, all my sisters and so on, because it is making me a better person, and it is helping me with being accountable. Because Sean and I live set apart. We live isolated, and so it helps to come back and remember, hey, did you do this? Did you do that? You need to keep up, stay with them, and you will become the person that you've been asking, to make you be, to be a better sister. So, thank you. Bye.
Well, thank you, sis, for sharing all of that. I'm gonna answer your question, so don't worry, you'll get an answer to the question that you didn't get an answer to during the time when you were reading. But like I tell you all the time, and I'm gonna take a moment to kind of give you your flowers. First off, thank you for being honest and vulnerable, right? A lot of people don't like putting their business out there or anything that personal about them to the public. But this is a loving and a family environment. We all family here. Ain't nobody holier than thou. We all have our struggles and our issues. And so thank you for being honest and taking that time to be, vulnerable with us. I do truly appreciate it. And I love things like that, right? We should, more of us should be able to, share things that we are dealing with and struggling with to one another, because now that we are aware that there's some specific things going on, we can, you know, pray for that. We can speak to that, right? We can come together as a family and get those things addressed. But real quick, Shabbat Shalom to Sister Jasmine. I saw you came in there. Glad you could make it. Shabbat Shalom, Brother Greg. I saw you came on in here. Glad you could make it. I know you were in the YouTube for a minute. I'm glad you're back on over here. Professor S did the icebreaker for you, so no worries, brother.
Thanks, Professor S. Shabbat Shalom, family.
Okay, so but quickly before I go back to what I was gonna say, let's answer your question. So, why was it an issue? Why wasn't it an issue when Moses married the Midianite woman? The issue was because, well, not the issue, but the reason why it wasn't an issue for Moses was because she was righteous. The difference between the difference between Zipporah and, for example, the Cushite wife that they gave Moses when he was king of Cush was the Cushite wife was wicked, right? And the main reason why we were instructed to stay away and not take wives of these other nations, especially from the ites, was because they was worshiping other false gods and deities and idols, and they were also luring Israel to do the same thing, right? So it wasn't just simply I can take a wife, but I must remain honorable and righteous to the Most High. You know, the women were swaying and turning away their hearts, kind of like King Solomon with all of his wives and concubines, right? But scripture actually, if you look in I believe it's Jasher. If you look in the book of Jasher, where it talks about Moses's time where he became king of Cush, and they gave him the Cushite wife, the Cushite queen, as his wife. He didn't talk to her. He didn't touch her. He didn't look her way. He completely and totally ignored her, right? But then not too long after, a few chapters down, I believe it's like in chapter 78, I believe in Jasher, where he comes and he meets Jethro, and he marries Jethro's daughter, and it was in the plain in the plains of Midian, and they called Jasher calls Jethro a Midianite priest. But when he met her, the book of Jasher says that her righteousness was nothing less or nothing short of Sarah, Rachel and Leah. And so the difference was because of her righteousness. That's why he was permitted. And that's why he used discernment to be able to take her as a wife. So yeah, it was a difference of the condition of the heart, which is why one Midianite was acceptable and the other Midianite was the cause of a man and a woman getting speared and killed. And the Most High getting angry and casting his wrath upon the camp of Israel during that time. So that's that portion. Brother Greg, you popped on in here. Did you want to share anything from the Torah portion, or we good?
I would just say, I guess, from Romans, when just says all Israel, shall be saved as it is written, and they shall come out of Zion, the deliverer, and shall turn away ungodliness from Jacob, and the covenant with them, and so all the sins shall be taken away. So it's just like encouraging to hear that.
Absolutely. It's good to hear when that somebody else messed up so you can be able to get in there.
Yeah. Seriously.
Absolutely.
That's what I wrote down too, that y'all was using both of them to keep each other like in check. And there's so much freedom in that too. When I was reading the example, well, I had to go back a little bit ahead to get more of the context, but when it was saying for if you were cut out of the olive tree, which is wild by nature, like nature of sin, and were grafted contrary to nature into a cultivated olive tree, how much more will these who are natural branches, aka the Israelites, be grafted into their own olive tree? So when I was reading that, it was like, there's so much freedom and love in that.
Absolutely.
Something else that I could point out here as well is you know, as Elohim used a wicked sorcerer, right, to bless Israel. Israel itself came out of wickedness, right? Because Abraham's father made an idol, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, Isaac's wife, her family, and Laban, they were all idol worshipers, and Laban actually did all kinds of enchantments and divinations and things. So they actually had all of this in their lineage. And essentially Elohim was taking it and making it right, you know, because it was all being, you know, all of this wickedness, you know, Laban was wicked, and Abraham's father was wicked. But all of this through the generations, Elohim was taking that out and teaching them there's a better way. But at the same time, even wicked people can be used by Elohim to bring a restoration of what he wants, you know. Just like with Egypt, right? With Israel being in Egypt, yeah, they were enslaved in Egypt, but actually it was Egypt that preserved them from dying off, right? Because had they not gone to Egypt, they would have been in a famine and starved, right? And so it was all pre-planned and organized so that they would go into Egypt. And even though Egypt ultimately didn't do them good, for a time it did, and that time it did them a lot of good. They were able to grow and multiply. And so coming out of that, they had once again all of the wicked influences of idolatry and sorcery and all this stuff that they had to remove from themselves, you know.
Absolutely.
But Egypt was actually a good thing for Israel to go into because it preserved them, you know. So.
Facts. Go ahead, Brother Greg.
I was going to say, just really quick, this made me think of Ava touched on it, and then Professor S just kind of touched on it a little bit too. When Ava earlier, like, you know, she get envious sometimes when, you know, like the people hear from y'all when they're doing like all this wicked stuff and witchcraft. I was like, I want to hear from y'all. Maybe I'm not ready. It just made me think about even modern times, because if you watch a lot of people's testimonies, especially when they were witches and warlocks, and, you know, they were doing all this stuff, and then they had like a supernatural encounter that made them turn away and repent. And it's like, wow, because then a lot of things that they talk about, it's like, it makes you sometimes say, wow, I wish I had that type of supernatural encounter. But it's like, you know, the truth, and they were kind of resisting it. So it's like they needed that like slap in the head, you know, that knock on the head to turn them away. So they had to have that supernatural experience. And it's like a lot of things they talk about, it's like, well, we already know that truth. So like I said, Yah touches us in different ways, even though we may not necessarily have a supernatural experience. Some of us, we still know the truth and we still pursue and like, you know, I just feel like people need to see it differently in order for them to, you know, turn to Yah. Because maybe that's a good sign. Maybe that's actually good. Like, hey, well, I didn't have all this supernatural. That means I didn't need it. So because my faith was strong enough, okay, you know, this is another way, something else that just made me think of that.
No, that's a really interesting point there. A lot of people probably don't even consider that. Because I tell people all the time, like, I've heard like people say like, man, I don't have like a real interesting testimony. My testimony is really simple. You know, I didn't go to church, and then somebody brought me to church, and then I started reading the Bible and getting more in the word. And now I'm reading the Bible, and I go to church, and I do this and I do that. And that's it, right? And they're like, it's all plain and stuff. And then I hear other people talk about having supernatural encounters or having these like amazing testimonies that they can share and inspire other people. But like you said, you know, the Most High uses all of us in certain ways, and you know, they got to understand that their story isn't over yet, right? They're still living through the pages in the chapters, right? So who knows what the Most High has in store for them in our life. A lot of my early life was just basic and heathen and basic, right? A lot of stuff didn't happen until years and years and years later. But, you know, I would prefer to have a very basic testimony than go through some of the stuff I'd have went through and seen some of the stuff I'd have seen.
Because like me, I would not have wanted to go through what they did, but like their experience is like kind of what they experienced without the weight.
Yeah, give me all the benefits without the
crazy
hardship.
stuff, like torture and all kinds of like craziness, but
yeah, give me all
But
the
see,
benefits
then
without the hardship.
once again, you know, a lot of these supernatural encounters, you hear people's testimonies, and they're like, man, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I felt so horrible. You know, it was so painful to go through. And although the end result was good, at the time they had to go through a ton of soul searching and stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
You know, we should really be grateful that that it's not something that's required of us, you know, to go through all of that pain, personal anguish. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it can be. I know people that I've talked to that it can be really difficult for them. You know.
Yeah, and like Ava said, maybe we weren't like, if we were to go through that, we probably couldn't take it, or maybe it would have been too much for our, you know, just the way we didn't need to go through that. But you know, you switch roles, that person that, you know, they didn't get the supernatural encounter, but they were into witchcraft, so they probably would have, who knows, commit suicide or did something crazy. And then we experienced that, and we couldn't, you know, because he gives us whatever, no more than what we can handle. So it's like, you know, it's like when you kind of look at it, wow. At the time, it may not feel like that, but then later, like you said, wow, you know, that actually needed that, or I'm actually glad that happened, or if that didn't happen, I would not have been led here to go here and do this or whatever, or meet this person. So yeah, it's good. He knows what he's doing.
Hallelujah.
Yes.
All right, so I'm gonna read next week's Torah portion real quick, and then I'm gonna let whoever want to speak, and then I'll transition into the lesson. So next week's Torah portion is Numbers chapter 25, verse 10 through chapter 30, verse 1. 1 Kings 18, verses 46 through chapter 19, verse 21, and then Romans 11 again, but this time it's chapter 2 through 32, not 25 through 32. So a little bit of overlap there, but definitely getting some more context in relation to next week's Torah portion. So I'll leave that up so you guys can take your pictures, write it down, whatever you need to do. Whoever was getting ready to speak, go right ahead.
Okay. So another thing that I realized when I was getting to read today was the way that Yah spoke about us when he was talking to Balaam or whoever it was, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even though Israel had done so much to mistreat Yah, he spoke in a positive sense about us. I'm like, wait a minute. Didn't we just test Yah 10 different times? Didn't we just make the golden calf? Didn't we go worshiping all these other gods? Didn't we speak against Moses? Didn't he just have to have serpents come and bite us, and then he swallow up people into the earth? You know, all these things that just happened, and yet twice in there in our portion, I didn't get to write it down, I'm sorry, but it impacted me, was that twice in there he said he found no iniquity in Jacob. What? I'm sorry. Am I fast forwarding or something? Is he talking about what are we talking about? No, I'm serious. And why it's impacted me so much is that this is something that as parents and as lovers of one another, our spouse or whatever, that we need to take away from the reading, is to guard the way that we speak about the people who we claim that we love. So our children and our spouses. Be careful how you speak about them to especially your enemy. And people who are your enemy could be your father, your mother. You know, careful how you talk to your mother about your wife, you know, the bad things you might say. Because see here, Yah said nothing about what we did. He didn't say, well, you know, she has her problems. You know, Israel does this and that to me every once in a while, and she walked out on me so many times. Nothing. He said he saw no iniquity in her, meaning he forgave us every single time. Every time we repented, he forgave us and he wiped it away. Why it impacts me so much is because I still need cleansing from rejection growing up. And I remember there were so many times that I would hear my mother speak with her sisters, because she has like 4 or 5 sisters, right? And they talk each day, you know, from morning till night. They talk to each other a lot. And I remember hearing, you know, everything I did wrong. It didn't matter if I was in the room or not in the room. And I heard it so often, every single day. And that impacted me so badly growing up. I was traumatized with it. I didn't have good relationships with people. I was very guarded. It worked out for good now because I was able to separate myself from, I was able to step away when the Father told me to step away from family. So it was easier for me. But at the time, it was difficult. Having to deal with that kind of rejection from your own mother. Having to deal with, you know, the separation of my parents, being divorced and so on. So it's just so many things piled up onto each other. And so it's like, when I saw this, I'm like, really? Yeah? You had nothing bad to say about, and it's not like he was covering it up. It's not like he's pretending. It's that he is showing us how to forgive. He is showing us how to maintain their dignity. He's giving us a chance to do right, to become stronger, to lean on him. I couldn't lean on my mom. I couldn't go to her about anything personal. Even right now, our relationship is severed because I will even bring up things in the past to try and tell her, you know, this really affected me. I remember she would say stuff like, you know, she eats like a cow, you know, things like that. I remember my mother saying about me. And when I would give trouble and when I would lash out trying to seek attention. And she didn't understand how it was keeping me from her to be able to have a good relationship with her. And I'm like, this is what Yah is showing me right now, and how to be with my son. And I try very much to even not talk to people at all about my relationships with people I love, because it's like you get tempted. People like, so you're really good. You know, it's okay to be normal. It's okay to have a complaint every once in a while. I don't need to complain to you. If I have a problem with my son, or if I have a problem with somebody I'm dealing with, it's that I'm supposed to go to it about. I'm not supposed to then speak things for the enemy to then take and accuse me of putting my son down, putting down a lover, you know, that kind of thing. So if anything, I just wanted to point that out, you know, how loving our Father is. How I remember when with my former husband early on in relationship, I don't know if it's a Gen X thing, where in our drama movies and stuff, you'd see how, you know, the good guy, the nerd, he never got the girl. It was always a bad guy. I'm like, really? Yeah? Really? You've been trying to show me this all along, that this is how we have been to you. Yah is the good guy. Yah is the guy who is righteous. And yet we keep going after sin. We keep trying to get the attention of the guy who is going to hell. And Yah is reaching, forgiving. And every time we still go back to the filth and forget about him who loves us unconditionally, never has a bad word to say about us, even though we treat him like crap. So anyway, make sure that you speak positively about your relationships to others. If you have a problem with your children, if you have a problem with your husband or your wife or somebody that you're dealing with, Yah is the only person who needs to know about that. He's the only person that you can trust and understand what's going on. Full story, your side, your spouse's side, the child's side, whatever, because it makes a lasting impact, and you're giving the enemy more evidence against you, and you're allowing the enemy to curse whoever it is he's speaking badly about if you go that route. All right. Thank you so much for letting me ramble.
No problem.
Sister Ava, I just gotta say, you and I need to have a conversation, because I feel like I can relate to you on so many of the things that you've spoken about. First off, when you were, talking about the weight loss, I'm sure my husband was listening to you and like, yep, I've heard about that, because I am always talking to him. And I'm the same way. I don't eat a lot. I'm lucky if I eat once a day, but still, like, the weight won't come off. But I feel like it's other things too, right? It's a multitude of things. But all in all, like for a while, I've been feeling the pull in my spirit to fast, but I haven't been obedient and I haven't done it. And so that's one of those things where the Most High is always like, I always feel that conviction, like, okay, so what are you waiting for? Like, why are you waiting? Like, I've been told you, I've been showed you, like, what are you do? Like, what are we doing? Because when you think about it, there's always going to be something, and there's days where like I'll be like, oh well, we're getting ready to take the kids here, or we're getting ready to do something as a family over there, and I'm like, well, I want to eat something, but do I really need to? Like, is food more important than what the Most High told me to do? You know? Um, but then also to confirm, like, just to like what you said about, being careful of what you tell people about the people that you love. Um, I always knew that going into marriage, but I really had to learn it the hard way in year 3 of our marriage. Because when my husband, made the transition from, claiming Christianity, so to speak, over to being Hebrew, it wasn't a smooth transition. It was very difficult. And mind you, at the time he was overseas, so we weren't in the same house. And the way everything happened, it was very negative. There was no kind of like positivity in it. The positive side obviously was is he was getting the information and he was learning and he was researching, and you know what I mean? But outside of that, there was nothing positive. And it became a burden in our marriage, almost to the point of divorce. And it's crazy because instead of getting phone calls or messages from people that were like, you would think, they love us together and they're like, you guys are an amazing couple and you guys have a beautiful family. And, instead of coming and being like, what do you need in this moment? Like, I see you're struggling. And not only was I only struggling in the marriage because of the transition, I was struggling because I was living, in California with my father. I was by myself, didn't have a support system. It was a lot of stuff all at once. So I felt by myself, and you would think people would come, including my mother and whoever else. You would think people would come and say, hey, what can I do to help you? Do you want me to pray for you? Do you want me to help you with the kids? Like, what is it that you need from me to help you? But instead, everyone was like, oh, you better be careful. Or like, it was just, it felt more like people were not only encouraging me to push towards the line of divorce, but it was more like they were interested in the possible behind the scenes drama that his transition had caused in our marriage. And I was like, if that's what you guys are calling me for, like, I already have to talk to him about it. You think I want to talk to y'all about it? Like, I need somebody to uplift me. I need someone to, strengthen me. So it is very important, not only who you connect with and who you surround yourself with, but what you tell people, because it's one of those things that you don't know what they're going to say, how they're going to feel based on what you tell them. And the problem is you're married to that person. And I think a lot of people don't realize the minute your friends or your family change the way they feel about the person that you're with, now that becomes a burden on you because you love them almost as close to unconditionally as possible. Because you get through the crap, whatever that crap is, and you're back to being so head over heels in love with them. But your family doesn't love them the way you are called to love them. So now it makes it hard because you've told them certain things that they can't move past.
Con. Sis said exactly. More harm than good. Look at their lives. Worse, divorce, all sorts of relationship problems. Facts. Facts. Now, I just got a question. Who's these people up in your ear? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
You already know.
They're gonna learn. Look, they're gonna learn what the meaning of today is, which is a great segue to what the topic is: profanity. I'm about to cuss some folks out. No, I'm just kidding. I ain't gonna do that. But yeah, the interesting thing about the Torah portion this week, and I'm telling you, this was the Most High. I was not timing on my part. Was we dealing with the Balaam and Balak and the cursing? So I want everybody to kind of take a mental note of the Torah portion where Balak was trying to get Balaam to curse Israel, but he ended up blessing Israel, because that curse is going to play a significant role in the lesson today when we talk about profanity. So is profanity a sin, right? For my folks on Facebook, YouTube, put a 1 in the chat if profanity is a sin to you, and put a 2 in the chat if you don't look at profanity as a sin. And for my people on the panel, you guys can go ahead and just quickly share like what your current viewpoint, stance, perspective is on profanity or the use of profanity, and then we'll jump right into the lesson. I said my folks that's on YouTube and Facebook. y'all in the chat. Y'all want y'all in the personal chat. I want to hear your voices.
Well, I guess I'll start. I guess for me, it's I feel like it's I don't know if I want to say necessarily a sin, but I don't see it as like a good thing per se, as far as because when I think about like I forget the Bible verses, like using empty words or words that because every word has a meaning, and even when you look at frequency behind words, I think even swear words, a study done with like swear words had a different frequency behind, negative type of frequency, and just makes you feel bad. And so I feel like once I got baptized, I just had a conviction to not try my best. Obviously, once in a while they still do slip out, but I don't know. I just felt convicted to not really need to use swear words anymore. I could just use other words like "oh shoot" versus the other word and stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I just think it's not a good thing.
Okay. I see some 1s in the chat as well, and some 2s. Let's see. Kaylee and Aaliyah, what is 1/2? Is it y'all split? Y'all in the middle?
Depending on the day, well, really bad, it's okay.
For me, like, I'm still trying to find scriptural evidence of it being a sin, because there are times that I've even brought it up to you and I'm like, oh, look at what I got for you this time. And then you end up, kind of like justifying it. And so I'm like, all right, we'll try again later. But I think really and truly it comes down to maybe, I guess, how other people and unbelievers may see you, or if you're, I guess, like their perception. So I'm gonna use a little analogy. Like you can be a believer and everybody knows you're a believer, and you may be out at like a restaurant or something having a drink, right? But then somebody else that may be new to the faith, they can see you having a drink, and they can assume that you've had 7 drinks or you've had 10. It doesn't matter. Like, but they have a certain perception. And so that could then cause them to say, okay, well then it's okay for me to drink and blah, blah, because so-and-so did it, and even though you may have had just 1 drink, anybody else on the outside looking in, they may have, certain ideas and then run off with it. So same thing with cursing, so I always try to be mindful of like who I'm around, especially if I'm around people who are kind of new to the faith, or they may be unbelievers and I know that they're looking at me with a microscope. I try to watch myself even further, not to necessarily hide the things that I'm doing, but to not be a stumbling block to others, you know. And then oftentimes too, when people are using excessive cursing, I think number one, that shows lack of vocabulary. And then number two, I mean, you're kind of getting mixed in with the world because the world uses that vocabulary all the time. So, you know, I feel like the most important thing is about you know, balance. And if it gets to the point where if it's excessive, then that's kind of a problem.
Great points. All great points.
I'm definitely with you on the vocabulary part because I think that's the part that gets me. Like you hear the verbiage said, "Oh, I curse like," you know, you hear people say I curse like a sailor or you curse like a sailor. And people in the military definitely, absolutely, positively, 1000% curse a lot. Um, I don't know if it was something that just started somewhere and it just went rampant like a plague in the military, but um, I just feel like when you hear someone speak, if every other word is a curse word, to me that shows the limited vocabulary. And at that point, I almost sit there and say, "Yeah, you're not that educated. You can't possibly." You know what I mean? Like, and like in our home, it's funny because our kids have been going through this phase where they're like, "Can we cuss or can we say this or can we say that?" And I told my kids, I said, "Look, truthfully, I don't have a problem with cursing, but until until you guys have a structurally sound foundation when it comes to vocabulary, no, you can't say a single cuss word." Because I don't want them to be out in this world. And I told my husband today, as a matter of fact, I don't want them to be out in the world thinking that they can just throw a cuss word in to a conversation in any kind of setting or in any kind of room. You know what I mean? Like there's a time and a place and a space for everything, including profanity. And I need their foundation to be set and strong before they become lazy and think that profanity is the way to go.
I agree with that 100% cuz I'll say like through high school, um especially like freshman sophomore year, I would never cuss like at all. And people would constantly point it out and say you never cuss or nah, nah, nah. And then I found myself kind of easing certain cuss words in when I'm talking to my friends just for the sole purpose of trying to fit in. And then when I would cuss, they'll be like, "Oh, you sound funny," or "You sound different." And over time, the people that I was around, I would start to develop their vocabulary and things that they would say. And, honestly, there was no purpose for me to even use those cuss words. The only purpose that I was doing it for was just to fit in and be like other people. So, so yeah, I agree. Definitely get them like a strong foundation so that way they don't have to, rely on that. And definitely so they don't have to try to fit in with other people as well.
Facts. Go ahead, Aaliyah.
I would say for me, one, the first thing that came to my head was just like one is not ladylike. Just like both Miss Ebony and Kaylee said, it's a lack of vocabulary for the most part. And I've already kind of been raised, you don't curse around grown ups, you don't curse around kids, even as an adult. I still follow that. Um, because it's just not ladylike. It's not cute. I just don't feel that it is professional. And when it comes to the faith side of things, even though I also couldn't during the time, like I was like really, really, really reading. I've been slacking lately, but um, even that was one of the things that I was trying to find of just like, okay, where does it say about this? What does it say about this? And it's just, and then I'm around, you know, you or when I was around Marquita, and you know, I would hear little words here and there and stuff like that. And I'm just like, dang, you know, how how are they cursing? And they're so deep into this faith. And that's how I feel also when I tell people like, oh no, you know, I'm still transitioning into the Hebrew faith and stuff, and then I'll slip up and I'll be like, damn, or something. And they'll be like, dang, like, oh, I thought you were super religious, like you've been doing this a real structure, and you just said a cussing word. I'm just like, well, so far as I've learned, it's not a sin to curse. So excuse me. But um but yeah, it's still, for me, it's still like 50-50. I'm still growing and learning, and then at the same time, I still don't want to fall into the, I don't know, into like the ignorance, I would say, when it comes to certain judgments and everything. So
Okay. All good points that I've heard, whether it was for or against. All good points. Anybody else would like to share from their personal perspective before we get started?
I'd like to say, for me, it feels like a sin because I don't cuss. But when I get mad, I don't think it comes out, and I feel really horrible after. So to me, I feel really bad, feel like I'm doing something wrong when I do it. So I don't know if it's an actual sin, but to me, for myself, I feel like it is.
Okay.
I feel like it is, just because usually if a person is cussing, it's because they're angry. And anger is a sin. We're not supposed to get angry, right? Not righteous anger. Righteous anger is understandable, but we're not supposed to get angry. We're not supposed to act like the world, and that's what the world does. So I feel like it is a sin for that reason. I'm done. Sorry.
Okay. I see y'all. I see y'all. Well, you guys already know how we do it here on Shabbat Talk, Truth Talk Radio. We don't be like waiting for people to watch like 2, 3, 4 hours in to learn what the platform is. And so I've had conversations with Professor S. I think we're similar on this, but we may have different perspectives overall. But is profanity a sin? The simple answer is no, it is not a sin. But there's a lot that goes with that, right? There's a whole lot that goes with that. And we're going to get into a lot of it. We're going to get into a lot of the points that you guys made today. We're going to get into a lot of some of the things that Sister Tess just mentioned in regards to like how we feel personally about some things, and how there's that conviction aspect too as well. And obviously you already know this Shabbat talk, so we're going to get into the scripture. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Let me share the screen. Okay. Can everybody see that?
Yep.
All right. Is profanity a sin? All right. So is profanity a sin? We're gonna cover a lot today. I'm gonna try to breeze through this so we don't take a whole bunch of time, because it is a lot of information. You can see 38 pages worth. But you got, let's begin by watching a short video that I believe sums up the argument or the perspective of many that choose not to use profanity. Those that believe using profanity is a sin. This video, I believe, is a really good representation of that perspective and that understanding. And I will be the first one to tell you that if you have this understanding and this perspective, it's You have some very, very good and strong points. I will admit. I totally get it. If somebody chooses not to curse, or if they feel as though there's something wrong with it, you won't get an argument from me. But when we're talking about the topic of is profanity a sin, right? That's where we're gonna get more into it. But we're gonna watch this quick video, and this is from the perspective of those who
many others like you have.
Sorry, from the perspective of those who believe profanity is a sin.
Hi there. Many others like you have asked, is it a sin to cuss, swear, or curse? Let's find out, shall we? You can also discover more on gotquestions.org. Now, let's answer your question. It's definitely a sin to swear, curse, cuss, etc. The Bible makes this abundantly clear. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. For those who would love life and see good days must keep his tongue from evil and his lips from deceitful speech. With the tongue we praise our Lord and Father, and with it we curse men who have been made in God's likeness. Out of the same mouth come praise and cursing. My brothers, this should not be. Can both fresh water and salt water flow from the same spring? My brothers, can a fig tree bear olives, or a grapevine bear figs? Neither can a salt spring produce fresh water. James makes it clear that the lives of Christians should not be characterized by evil speech. By making the spring analogy, his point is that it is uncharacteristic for a believer to have both praise and cursing come from his or her mouth. We cannot praise God while at the same time cursing our brothers. Jesus explained that what comes out of our mouths is that which fills our hearts. Sooner or later, the evil in the heart comes out through the mouth in curses and swearing. But when our hearts are filled with the goodness of God, praise for Him and love for others will pour forth. Our speech will always indicate what is in our hearts. The good man brings good things out of the good stored up in his heart, and the evil man brings evil things out of the evil stored up in his heart. For out of the overflow of his heart, his mouth speaks. Why is it a sin to cuss? Sin is a condition of the heart, the mind, and the inner man, which is manifested in our thoughts, actions, and words. When we swear and curse, we are giving evidence of the pollution in our hearts that must be confessed and repented of. In conclusion, when we put our faith in Christ, we receive a new nature from God. Our hearts are transformed, and our speech reflects the new nature God has created within us. Thankfully, when we fail, our great God is faithful and just and will forgive us our sins and purify us from all unrighteousness. All right, that answers your question. Is it a sin to cuss, swear, or curse? On our website, gotquestions.org, you'll...
All right. So I figured when I watched that video, I figured it summed up the argument, brought out some scriptures, clearly said that it is a sin to cuss. And I feel like a lot of people who do come from this perspective would agree with this video wholeheartedly. I would have actually agreed with this video wholeheartedly back during the days where I didn't cuss when I was convicted about cussing. I actually went about 2.5 years without cussing because I felt so bad about it at one point in time. But quickly, where is it at? Okay, so for Miss Lee, I think that's Rashida, Sister Rashida. If that's you, Shabbat Shalom, sis. If it's not you, I apologize, and Shabbat Shalom for Miss Lee. But they said, I'm new to reading the word. That's what made me think it was Rashida. But is judging people that do cuss a sin, right? So it depends on if you're operating in righteous judgment, right? If you're operating in righteous judgment and you believe that cursing is a sin, if you're judging them from a perspective of, hey, brother, sister in love, I don't think you should curse. The scripture says this about cursing, you shouldn't do that. There's one thing. That's not a sin. But if you're judging them like, oh, they over there cussing, that's when you fall into the category of sin because you're not operating in righteous judgment. You are trying to point out the speck in their eye when you have a whole log in your own eye. So you have to make sure that your house is in order before you start, really like trying to put other people, calling other people out. And that's actually depending on your intent. What is your intent when it comes to the judgment? Is the intent of the judgment trying to correct a brother or sister in love, or is it just trying to point out their sin? And that intent has a lot to do with whether or not that falls into the sin category or not. And intent, as we're going to really get into today a little bit later, has a big portion of whether something is considered a sin or not. Sister she was going in on the brother in the video. I can't with her. Let's see, checking real quick before we jump back on here. Okay, Shabbat Shalom, sister. I thought it was you when you said that, but okay, yeah, absolutely. Glad you in here. Planet Yah said, my rule of thumb is none of us are perfect and we should pray for each other over judging. I know that can be hard at times, but if you keep portraying instead of judging, it helps. I think you meant to say praying. Keep praying instead of judging, it helps. Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Who was that? Somebody was about to say something?
Oh, no, I was just saying, yeah, I'm Planet Yah. If you didn't know, yeah, I was just saying, yep.
Shoot. I forgot, man. It's been a while. Okay, cool. All right, so let's jump back on in here with the study. All right, so they did mention this scripture in the video, and I have it here because this really sums up the entire argument. Well, not argument, but you get what I'm saying. This sums it up everything. Luke 6:45. A good man out of the good treasure of his heart bringeth forth that which is good, and an evil man out of the evil treasure of his heart bringeth forth that which is evil. For of the abundance of the heart, his mouth speaketh. Keep that in mind throughout this entire lesson. Keep that in mind. Out of the abundance of the heart, his mouth speaketh. Okay. So we covered, the understanding that some believe that it is a cuss, that it is a sin to cuss or curse or use profanity. But let's look at the etymology. Okay. We're going to look at the etymology of the word profanity in itself, examining profanity. The word profanity comes from the root word profane, right? From this picture here, you see the origin is Latin, profanus, not sacred. Late Latin is profanitas. English, profane. Mid 16th century, you get profanity. So in the mid 16th century, you get the modern understanding of what we have as profanity. Profanity, etymology of profanity by Edemon Line. This is an article that I was able to find. Profanity, profaneness, quality of being profane, profane language or conduct. From late Latin profanatus, profaneness. From Latin profanus, and it says see profane as an adjective. We'll have that down here, but we'll get to that. And it says extended sense of foul language is from Old Testament commandment against profaning the name of the Most High, apparently a rare word before the 19th century. Blasphemy, profanity agree in expressing the irrelevant use of words, but the former is the stronger and the latter the wider. Profanity is language irreverent toward Elohim or holy things, covering especially all oaths that literally interpreted treat lightly the attributes or acts of Elohim. Blasphemy is generally more direct, intentional, and defiant in its impiety and is directed toward the most sacred things in religion. So profanity, the root of profanity is profane, essentially. And profane is something that is unholy, something that is, representing something contrary to the holiness of Elohim, specifically dealing with Elohim, right? Irreverent Profanity is language irreverent toward Elohim or holy things. Okay. And then down here, profane as an adjective, profane, unecclesiastical, secular, not devoted to sacred purposes, unhallowed. From Old French, profane, and directly from Latin profanus, and the medieval Latin often profanus, unholy, not sacred, not consecrated, right? Even going so far as ignorant, unlearned, also wicked or impious. Pious means righteous or devoted, right? Impious is obviously the opposite of that. So wicked. And I got the article link right here. So it's important to know, like when we talk about profanity in the modern sense, we got to understand where it came from, right? It's coming from Latin, and Latin is I ain't gonna say a new language, but fairly not. It ain't. Latin don't go all the way back. Okay, but even when you looking at the meaning from the Latin language, it's talking about things that are unholy, not sacred, not consecrated, right? Being ignorant or unlearned, wicked or impious, right? Different things like that, dealing with attributes or acts of Elohim. So we're going to get into the history of profanity. We're going to look up specific words. And if profanity offends you, I do apologize. There will be profanity in this because I'm reading it directly from here and I'm not sugarcoating nothing. So I apologize in advance. So the history of profanity. This is an article titled, "What's the Origin of the F Word?" It says, it's one of the most versatile words in the English language, but where did the F word really come from? Originally, the naughtiest of naughty words was actually quite an acceptable word, though no English speaker would say that today. Fuck is believed to have first showed up in written form sometime in the 1400s, and it was disguised in a cipher, although it was in use well before then. The F word in the dictionary. The F word was recorded in a dictionary in 1598. John Florio's A World of Words, London. It is remotely derived from the Latin fucere and Old German ficken or fucken, meaning to strike or penetrate, which had the slang meaning to copulate. Eric Partridge, a famous etymologist, said that the German word was related to the Latin words for pugilus, puncture, and prick. One folk etymology claims that it derives from for unlawful carnal knowledge, but this has been debunked by etymologists. The word became rarer in print in the 18th century when it came to be regarded as vulgar, right? So it wasn't even regarded as vulgar until the 18th century. It was even banned from the Oxford English Dictionary in 1960. Grove Press in the U.S. won a court case permitting it to print the word legally for the first time in centuries in D.H. Lawrence's Lady Chatterley's Lover, written in 1928. F-word euphemisms. The taboo nature of fuck has given rise to a slew of euphemisms or mild, indirect, or vague expression substituted for one thought to be offensive, harsh, or blunt. Frig, frack, frick, fork, and fug, defug, fucks, and WTF, or whiskey, tango, foxtrot, are all popular substitutions, especially for the spoken F word. We also now have F and effing, as well as F word and F bomb. All of these alternatives gives us ways to get around using everyone's favorite four-letter word. And it's the link for that article. So we see, the history of that specific word. We're going to get into a lot of other words too as well. But this word only goes back to the 14th century. And it was considered for roughly, 400 years, about 400 years, as common speech until the 18th century, when it was considered to be regarded as vulgar, right? So I want you guys to keep in mind that when you're talking about profanity and what's acceptable to speak and what words are acceptable to use and what's not acceptable to use, you got to understand it in context of the society that's using it, because this word was okay when society deemed it was okay for 400 years, from the 1400s to the 18th century. Oh, so 18th century is like in the 1700s. So for about 300 years, not 400 years, right? But then they deemed it vulgar, right? They deemed it vulgar, and then it was even difficult to get in print until 1960, right? So from the 1700s to 1960, it was like heavily banned in print. Where the bleep did that cuss word come from? This is an article talking about a bunch of different cuss words, profanity, and their origins as well. So it talks about the F word briefly, and then we'll get into the other ones. There have been many tall tales about the origin of fuck. No, it's not an acronym, but while not recorded until the 1500s, profanities weren't historically widely written down. Fuck is probably from an ancient root word meaning to strike, compared to Middle Dutch foken, to strike. Just like shit, the word fuck has countless applications. It's a noun, a verb, an interjection. The use of fuck as an insult, you stupid fuck, is an Americanism from the 1920s. These days, you can fuck around, over, about, up, and off. The list goes on. Our filthy, foul mouths have created a fuck for every occasion. Worried about how often you let this word slip, scientists say a good curse can give someone a boost of strength and may also be a sign of someone's verbal fluency, openness, and honesty. Motherfucker, this swear word is younger than you may have guessed. First recorded in the 1900s, though talking trash about people's mothers is, alas, nothing new. The phrase motherfucker, referring to someone or something despicable, was originally documented during an 1889 case argued at the Texas Court of Appeals. It was there a witness referred to a defendant as, that blank damn mother effing bastardly son of a bitch. And it was so it so horrified the court, it censored that one word in its official transcript. In the World War II era, motherfucker became a more popular way to say someone or something is irritating or ruthless. As the 1950s rolled around, the word took a turn for the better. If you can believe it, it can be used to describe someone formidable, strong, or otherwise admirable. Just ask Miles Davis, who supposedly favored this word and once complimented a young percussionist with, "You're a motherfucker." So you can see, just with this word, it went in transition from having different meanings depending on how they gave it and how they used it, right? Shit comes from the Old English shite or sight, which was originally a neutral word for diarrhea. So it was originally a neutral word for diarrhea, especially in cattle. By the 1500s, people began to use this curse word to mean an offensive and despicable person, usually a man. Here's an example from 1675. He had basely slandered him, calling shit, thief, beast. Tuck that insult combo in your back pocket. By the late 1800s, the word could refer to anything regarded as worthless. And from there, air exploded in popularity, giving rise to countless new uses and phrases. Give a shit, shit happens, shit for brains, to name a few. These days, people also use it to describe a large amount of something. Shit ton, anyone? An unfair situation, shit sandwich, and fun or amusement, shits and giggles. Asshole. As a vulgar term for the anus, asshole is recorded in the 1800s. Arsehole, with as being a variant of arse, and even older, recorded in the 1400s. Fast forward to the 1950s, when the word became more commonly used in reference to a contemptible person. Today, we've obviously kept this usage, showcasing our extreme distaste for someone by calling them this term. Of course, if you drop the hole, you're just calling that person a donkey, but you knew that, right? Bitch. Yes, bitch originally meant female dog, and it still does today, though you are likely going to turn some heads if you call Miss Flofu McPoodles a bitch. Bitch developed develops from the Old English beak, or I don't know how to say bick. I don't know. It wasn't until around the 1400s bitch was recorded as a disparaging word for a woman. It's still disparaging today, though some women have reappropriated the word in some instances by respelling it as betch or bish. Yeah, that word too. Many people consider this curse word doubly offensive. It contains damn from the Latin damnare, meaning to condemn, and the God word considered blasphemous, taken in vain in this context. That double offensiveness hasn't stopped plenty of folks from using it since at least the 1400s when the term is first recorded. Hell, we've all heard or used the phrase go to hell at least once or twice in our lifetime. But did you know that hell is recorded before the year 900? It comes from the Old English hell and hell, a term from the abode of the dead in mythology, and especially for the wicked, hence the Christian hell. Hell is related to a number of similar words in Germanic languages, like the Old Icelandic Hel, goddess of the underworld. The ancient root of hell and its Germanic cousins probably meant to cover or hide. Piss. The word piss might not be as offensive as some of the other cuss words on this list, but it's still foul. It can refer to anything from using the restroom to being exceedingly angry. The word piss is first recorded around 1250 to 1300 from French pissier, ultimately from a Latin word meant to imitate the sound of, well, peeing. In the World War II era, it became an intensifier. Piss poor, piss ugly. Bastard. When formerly used, the word bastard simply means a child who is born out of wedlock. However, when used as an expletive, it refers to an unpleasant or despicable person. The word bastard has been evidenced since at least 1250 and comes from the Anglo-French bastard, in turn from the medieval Latin bastardus. The original sense of these words is taken as the offspring of a polygynous marriage, having more than one wife of lower status. It became an insult by the 1800s, and in 1848 it appeared along with its now obsolete synonyms haircop, whorecop, and Jimbo or Gimbo, a bastard's bastard, in the dictionary of archaic and provincial words. Crap. The word crap, meaning to talk nonsense or excrement, is one of the less distasteful way distasteful way to say shit. Nonetheless, the word is still considered a crude curse word. Okay, this is a very visual etymology. Crap is first recorded around 1375 to 1425, originally referring to chaff, dregs, and other such remnants and scraps. It's not until the 1800s we see crap recorded as slang for excrement or poop. In the 1930s, we see crap as slang for stuff, as in clean up all the crap in your room. And that's the link for this article right here. So, we see a lot of the historical aspects with a lot of these words. A lot of these words, I think the oldest word went back to 900, but majority of them started anywhere between the 1300s to the 1400s. And then a lot of the more common understandings that we have of these derogatory terms, right? The derogatory context that we give them, that was really, really recent, right? You got the 1900s, some in the 1800s, a lot of them in the 1900s. And when I say 1900s, we're not talking like 1901. We're talking about 1950s, 60s. But that's just in terms of the history of it, right? Biblical connection. This is an article about cussing. I found it really interesting. Let's see. It says, many claim that profanity or cussing are a sin. Others maintain that words are just words. Historically, conservative Christian culture in America strongly condemned and tried to root out inappropriate language from the church, and even made proper language a functional measure of personal holiness. No informed Christian would dare argue against the claim that a disciple of the Messiah is called to a life of personal holiness. However, Christian culture has often incorrectly seemed to define holiness as merely avoiding doing bad things. As a result, generations of Christians have felt compelled to say shoot instead of shit, with no real understanding of what difference it makes beyond keeping them out of trouble with other church friends. What does the Bible have to say about the importance of our speech? What is profanity? Are some words just simply evil by nature? The Oxford Dictionary defines profanity as blasphemous or obscene language. Oxford also traces the term to the mid-16th century late Latin profanatus, from Latin profanes, which meant not sacred. Thus, profanity originally referred to someone using irreligious or incorrect language, aka common language, to refer to sacred things. These are the Latin roots of the modern English term. However, the Bible was not originally written in Latin. And if we are to understand what the Bible has to say about profanity, then we must delve into the context of the Bible. Biblical usage. The Hebrew term chalal and the Greek term koinos are the equivalents of the English term profane. Both the Hebrew and Greek terms carry the meaning of defiling, polluting, or treating as common. In most instances, the term refers to inadequate and unbelieving temple worship practices or ethically compromised behavior. The concern being that the nation or individual was hypocritical or falsely attributing things to Elohim that were not true. The clear concern of all these passages is to accurately present the character of Elohim in word and deed. The Bible and profane speech. The primary claim made by many modern Christians is that some words are inherently bad and ought not to be used, especially not by a follower of the Messiah. This claim is simply foreign to the Bible. I find no instance where a biblical author outlaws certain terms because the terms are inherently evil. Nevertheless, the Bible is full of passages that warn us about the destructive and evil speech. Below, I will attempt to exegete a representative sample of these passages and thus arrive at the Bible's primary concerns with our speech. Ephesians 4. I accepted Christ as a 20-year-old with a habitually foul mouth. After I was around Christian fellowship for a few moments, it became readily apparent that my vocabulary needed to be enhanced and changed. The first verse I memorized to combat my cussing conundrum was Ephesians 4:29. No foul language should come from your mouth, but only what is good for building up someone in need, so that it gives grace to those who hear. I cleaned up my tongue by regularly reciting this passage, and through the desire to fit in with and not offend other believers. However, years later, I discovered that this passage was not written to command me to start inserting shoot or dang or heck into my vocabulary in place of the old terms. As with all passages, Ephesians 4:29 must be read and interpreted within its broader context. The Bible is so full of warnings against damaging speech and calls for edifying speech that a full treatment of each passage would become too voluminous for the scope of this brief essay. That's the number one that was up here. Where is it? Yeah, right there. It's an in-text, I guess, in-text quote, in-text citation. Ephesians 4:25-32 says, therefore, putting away lying, speak the truth, each one to his neighbor, because we are members of one another. Be angry and do not sin. Don't let the sun go down on your anger, and don't give the devil an opportunity. Let the thief no longer steal. Instead, he is to do honest work with his own hands, so that he has something to share with anyone in need. No foul language should come from your mouth, but only what is good for building up someone in need, so that it gives grace to those who hear. And don't grieve Elohim's Holy Spirit. You were sealed by him for the day of redemption. Let all bitterness, anger, and wrath, shouting and slander be removed from you, along with all malice. And be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving one another, just as Elohim also forgave you in Hamashiach or Messiah. The overriding emphasis of the passage and the book of Ephesians is living as members of one another who seek to relate to one another as Elohim relates to us. Because of this higher calling, we speak the truth and use language that is good for building up someone in need so that it gives grace to those who hear. In the context, foul language is bitter, angry, slanderous speech designed to tear others down rather than profane words like shit or damn. Ephesians 5 and 4 was also influential in persuading me to stop cussing. Obscene and foolish talk or crude joking are not suitable, but rather giving thanks. Once again, context is key for understanding the meaning of this text. Ephesians 5, 1 through 5 says, therefore, be imitators of Elohim as dearly loved children, and walk in love, as Messiah also loved us and gave himself for us, a sacrificial and fragrant offering to Elohim. But sexual immorality and any impurity or greed should not even be heard of among you, as it is proper for saints. Obscene and foolish talking or crude joking are not suitable, but rather giving thanks. For know and recognize this, every sexual, immoral, or impure or greedy person who is an idolater does not have an inheritance in the kingdom of Messiah and of Elohim. As the initial therefore indicates, the passage above continues to flow of thought from Ephesians 4 about living consistently with our new identity in Messiah, just as bitter and slanderous speech do not fit with the reality that we are members of one another. So obscene and foolish talking or crude joking are not suitable for our new identity. The speech referred to here is that speech which normalizes and prizes things that Elohim says are destructive, such as sexual immorality. The person whose speech indicates that they prize those things is acting consistent with the old nature prior to the new birth through Messiah, which is what verse 5 drives home. In the context of Ephesians 5, 1 through 5, greed is also clearly named as a worldly value we ought not to normalize via our speech. Other key passages. There are various other passages that I could unpack, but they all end up more or less at the same place. The kind of speech that the Bible repeatedly warns against is speech that misrepresents Elohim and his values, tears others down, sows division and bitterness, etc., etc. Does the Bible strategically use profanity? The Bible is full of rich, meaningful, and very colorful language. Both Old Testament prophets and New Testament apostles sometimes go to extremes to use metaphors that no doubt arrested the attention of the original audience, and which simultaneously cause many modern readers to blush. Consider the following representative example. In Philippians 3, verses 7 through 9, Paul writes, but everything that was a gain to me, I have considered to be a loss because of Messiah. More than that, I also consider everything to be a loss in view of the surpassing value of knowing Messiah, my Lord, or my Adonai. Because of him, I have suffered the loss of all things and consider them as dung, so that I may gain Messiah and can be found in him, not having a righteousness of my own from the law, but one that is through faith in Messiah, the righteousness from Elohim based on faith. Paul intentionally employs a profane word choice in order to make a strong point about how far short works righteousness comes when compared to righteousness through Messiah. He says he considered all his old religious works and unblemished heritage to be like dung, except dung does not fully deliver the force that Paul's word choice originally dealt. The Greek word is skubalon, which can mean any of the following. Any refuse as the excrement of animals, offscourings, rubbish, dregs. But even that range of meaning does not fully reach the mark according to my New Testament and Greek professor, who maintained that a better translation of skubalon in this context would not be dung, but would rather be something like the shittiest shit stuck at the bottom of the shit canal. Strong language to make a strong and critical point about the importance of finding our righteousness in Messiah and what he has done for us. In addition, I encourage the reader to investigate the following passages: Ezekiel 23, 11 through 21, an example of Elohim's people's unfaithfulness being colorfully compared to a prostitute. Galatians 5 and 12, Paul refutes those who were pestering the Galatian Christians with the false teaching that they had to be circumcised to be saved. In his refutation, Paul calls on teachers who insist on circumcision cutting around to just go ahead and chop their own off. F. Allen Tomlinson, who was a conservative scholar at the Conservative Midwestern Baptist Theological Seminary. Some simple biblical conclusions. 1, the Bible does not teach that words are profane or evil in their own right. It depends upon how they are used and to what effect. 2, the Bible does teach that words are important and have tremendous impact upon others. Thus, we are to seek to encourage one another and build each other up. 3, we should be sensitive to our audiences, seeking to both avoid offense and also become all things to all people so that we can win some. 4, as James 3:1 states, teachers of the world should be especially careful not to add unnecessary distractions to their teaching, because teachers will be evaluated more closely. Thus, profane language should be used wisely and sparingly. 5, we should proactively use our speech to communicate Elohim's truth with others rather than obscure it. Right, and that was that article. And although he was going and breaking down scripture, we haven't even gotten to the scripture part yet. But real quick, does anybody have any interesting points they'd like to share or make? Anything surprised anybody so far? What about the history about some of these cuss words and things like that? And I'm also really just trying to catch up with some of the comments that's been going on, because I can't see the comment section when I'm reading the articles.
I could elaborate on some of this here real fast. I knew a guy, he'd been in the faith for years, right? He had been a Baptist, and then he got into Hebrew roots, learning Hebrew and following Torah and stuff. And he cussed like a sailor, like all the time. And someone asked him one day, it didn't really offend me. I don't get offended by that kind of stuff. But someone asked him, they were like, "How do you talk like that?" And he's using this foul language. He said, English, if you really look at English, the English language is itself a foul language. We're already speaking a foul language. He's like, but more to the point is, it's the intention behind it. Because words do have frequencies, but you can use the same word with different intent, which then gives it a different frequency. You know what I'm saying? And of course we should be careful not to offend people, right? But at the same time, like he pointed out, and I was gonna say something about that too, become all things to all people in order to win some, right? Where he said in that. And it's not necessarily that it's like, oh, I need to stoop to someone's level to, but if we really look at what Messiah did, he stooped down to the level of us lowly humans, right? And the filth, the absolute refuse that we're in, and he left all of the purity and holiness behind to come down here and be in the crap with us. You know what I'm saying? So we should never have a position of, oh, I'm better because I don't use that word. You know what I'm
saying? I was trying not to laugh as I was reading a lot of that. It was funny. It was funny, super funny. I was laughing a lot when I was even getting all of this information. But
yeah, I was
for y'all to keep pointing that out, it's weird to read. It's one thing to say it in your natural like speech. It's another thing to read it like from a piece
Yeah,
of
it
paper.
is. It sounded like something funny.
Because I'm reading it and I'm trying to. Because when I read, I try to read, with proper pronunciation and everything like. And that's not how I cuss when I cuss, so it sounds weird. And then Cindy over there, like covering her eyes and her ears, like, "Oh my goodness, bro, it don't sound right coming from you." It's funny, but all of y'all been going ham in there. Let's see,
like this passage right here is a perfect example of. I mean, this would be considered profane speech, right? Or like modern day profanity, saying something like filthy rags, because it actually means menstrual rags. It's like telling someone that the best thing you have to give them is a used tampon. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah, it's pretty. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, good to know y'all finding this funny. Let's jump back on in here. All right. Okay. Ancient cursing versus modern cursing. Now let's watch this video first, and then we'll get into the actual difference between the two. Hold up, let me pull it up. Let me see. 1 second. Okay. Present video file. All right. Pay close attention to this, because this is also kind of more elaborating on what Professor S just mentioned, and we're going to really get into a lot more of this too as well.
Profanity is any time you take something that is sacred and confuse it with something that is common. So can words be profane? Yes, but more often than not, it's not the cussing. It's using this holy, divine gift of God's breath that I can use to bless people, and then I use it to tear them down. I use it to cause harm. And so there's a way that you could live your whole life and never say a swear word, but actually your whole life is swearing. Your whole life is profane because you're wasting the gift of God's breath on your life.
Do I need to play that again for the people in the back? When I first saw that video, I had to clap just because he hit the nail on the head. You can go your whole life without even saying one cuss word, one use of profanity, right? But still be using profane speech all throughout your life, right? Because like the scripture says, that's why I said keep Luke 6:45 in mind, right? Out of the heart, right, is what comes out of our mouths. And so
no. Finish that thought, because I got to look this up anyways.
Okay, go ahead, look it up. Out of the mouth out of the heart is what comes out of the mouth, right? So if you have malicious intent and all of these things that are within you, it's going to come to the surface in your speech. And what comes out in your speech is going to be things that are not uplifting, things that are not encouraging, things that are putting other people down, right? I can literally, without using any form of modern or standard profanity, cuss words, whatever, and I can still absolutely like destroy somebody's character without ever using a F word or the B word or the A word, whatever, any of those, right? And so you wonder what is this thing that's causing, that's really causing the big deal or issue with these certain words being listed as profane words or profanity or cuss words or cussing. What is giving it that meaning? And then if you notice, when we went through the historical aspect of all of these different words, a lot of them inherently aren't don't mean nothing bad. They're just regular words that mean things. They're in dictionaries. They're in, regular speech. But then people, and when I say people, I mean society, the different societies and the different timelines, they give these words meaning, right? Like the word fuck, for example, that didn't have any type of negative connotation until 300 years later. Then they started to consider it a bad word to use, right? So if the meaning of something is changing with time, that lets you know that profanity in itself is a societal construct, right? We give the value as a society on what is deemed good and what is deemed bad, right? So to briefly touch on people who feel like they get convicted when they hear cuss words, the reason why you're convicted isn't because the Holy Spirit is telling you that that specific word that you said or used is wrong or inherently evil. The reason why you're getting convicted is one of two things. The first thing is you, based on the societal construct of that word being deemed bad, and you trying to attribute everything you do in accordance with the Most High, which is good, right? If it's not in accordance with what you deem is good, then you're gonna feel conviction about that, right? So if the world says that the word is bad and you don't want to be bad, you want to be good. If you say a bad word, you're gonna feel, or you could feel, conviction about that. And then two, the Holy Spirit could be giving you conviction, but not because of the specific word that you spoke out of your mouth, but because of the intent that you had behind the word, right? If your intent was to harm somebody, and let's just say if I wanted to disrespect a sister and I called her a bitch, right? It's not the fact that I called her a bitch. Bitch, the word bitch itself isn't the problem. The problem is I had an intention in my heart that I wanted to insult this sister by calling something other than her name, right? So where you can substitute the word bitch for whore, you can substitute it for a tree. If I called her a tree, even though there's nothing wrong about a tree, right? And we know tree isn't even considered a cuss word. But if I wanted to just call her out of her name, out of her character, to disrespect her, because that's what was within me as a bad intent, right? That is still utilizing profane, like that is still utilizing the bad intent that we're not supposed to as believers, if that makes any sense. So we need to watch our intent. And in that same situation, I could feel convicted by the Holy Spirit because of the intent that I had in utilizing speech against my sister. Instead of uplifting her or building her up, I was trying to tear her down in some manner, shape, or form. Not necessarily the specific word that came out of my mouth. A lot of times we get caught up in this modern understanding of the word itself. Words are just words. There's nothing inherently positive or negative. Like Professor S mentioned earlier with everything has a frequency. You can say you're fucking amazing and write it on a piece of paper and tape it to some water and let a flower begin to grow and blossom. And it'll grow and it'll blossom. But then you can take that same word and say you're fucking horrible and do the same thing, and then the flower will wither and die. It's not because the word fucking was used. It was because in one instance, the intent was to build and lift up the flower. And in the other instance, it was used to tear the flower down. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah. So absolutely, man. I mean, it's really the intent behind these words that makes it, whether it's cursing or not, So it's what I was going to do was I was going to point out in Ezekiel chapter 44. Where did it go now? I just had it. Oh, okay. So it's verse 23. It says, "And they shall teach my people," and this is talking about the Levites who previously were not acting according to what they were supposed to. But it says, "They shall teach my people the difference between the holy and the profane, right? And cause them to discern between the and the clean," right? What's happening these days in churches, they're not teaching the difference between holy and profane. They have some misconstrued idea of what is profanity, quote unquote. And that's what they're teaching. They're teaching a societal construct, as pointed out, rather than what the actual scripture says, right? And they're certainly not teaching the difference between the unclean and the clean, right? Because you know, you go to most places, they'll be like, oh yeah, have you some pork and some lobster tails. You know what I'm saying? So you know, we have to be aware and cognizant of what's actually being said and why, not necessarily, you know, it's not something that's simply on the surface, you know. Some people may look at it on the surface, and for those people, you want to be careful not to offend them, right? But when you really get down into the meat of it, it's not about the particular words being used.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Shabbat Shalom, servant. Great points. I just pull both of them up. Sister Ava, she said, murder of character, right? When you murder somebody, the difference between killing and murder is intent. Yeah. The difference between killing and murder is intent. That's literally the whole thing, right?
Which is why Messiah said, if you hate someone in your heart, you've already murdered them, because you have the intent there.
Yep.
Because
the emphasis on intent.
The intention is what makes it murder or not.
Facts. And it's just like I don't believe it was the last trivia night, but it was the previous trivia night. There was a question that asked about the 10 Commandment, right? The thou shalt not kill. Was that a correct translation? And the answer was no, it wasn't. It's not thou shalt not kill. It's thou shalt not commit murder, right? We're not supposed to murder something, but you can kill something, right? And it can be completely righteous, right? If you self-defense is prime example, right? You have no ill intent towards someone, but they're trying to take your life, and in defense of your life, you end up killing them. That's not murder. That's just you killed that individual. There's no sin there, right?
Or going to war. You know, that's not about murder. It's not because you have a particular grudge against the person you're fighting. It's because you've got a campaign to advance. You know what I'm saying? Or you know, someone breaks into your house. It actually says in the Torah, someone comes that a thief comes in your house to rob you, you can kill him. And that wouldn't be murder, because you had no previous malintent against that person. They did something against you, and you did what you had to do. You know what I'm saying? That's it.
Yeah. Great point. And I love where you went with the societal construct and everything like that, because and that how they were teaching a societal construct rather than teaching what the scripture actually said, because we're going to get into that, right? So ancient cursing versus modern cursing. So let's look at James 3:10. Out of the same mouth proceedeth blessing and cursing. My brethren, these things ought not so to be, right? So when we look at this word cursing here, it's interesting because there's a biblical understanding of what this word means, and then there's the secular or worldly understanding of what this word means. And the problem is we've given both to our modern dictionaries, but we've combined both into one, and so we just attribute that word to everything when that's not what it's for. So right here, this is a screenshot from Google of curse, the definition of curse. So the first definition, it says a solemn utterance intended to invoke a supernatural power to inflict harm or punishment on someone or something. And they gave an example. She put a curse on him. This is actually closer to the biblical understanding or the biblical meaning of the word curse. But then in the same dictionary, number 2 says a coarse or blasphemous word or phrase used to express anger or other strong emotion. His mouth was spitting vile oaths and curses. Now, even in the more secular understanding of what the definition that they have here for it, it's still mentioning some biblical aspects. For right here, it says blasphemous, right? To be blasphemous. That is something that is specifically regarding Elohim, going against Elohim, right? Now, you can have coarse language. Coarse just means rough, right? So that can be attributed to modern day profanity, but it also has blasphemous in a definition. Then the example that they give, his mouth was spilling vile oaths and curses. Oaths and curses. When we cussing, we not giving oaths. When we cussing, we're not casting spells, right? She put a curse on him. We're just saying specific words that are deemed curse words. And that's one of the problems, right? It can also be used as a verb. The verb number 1 says invoke or use a curse against. It often seemed as if the family had been cursed. We already know. We talk about curses all the time, right? The curses in Deuteronomy, or generational curses, or, you know, somebody was bewitched years and years ago and those curses passed from generation to generation. Those are curses, not using the word ass or shit. We're blending the two types of curses, and we're making the modern understanding of curse of using language to be the other type of curse, which is actually dealing with, you know, different dark arts. And because the Bible says that the dark arts are bad, and society says that certain words are bad, we just combine them. And then you see the churches keep that going, like Professor S said, and they started to teach that. When all cursing is, as we saw, it's a societal construct. We dictate as a society what those words mean, right? So there are two forms of cursing that are not naturally related, but rather have been categorized together in the modern understanding. The ancient form of curse is a negative invocation or a cast spell to inflict some type of harm. Think of the witch's curse. The modern form of curse is the use of profanity, which, as we have already concluded, is a societal construct that gets its meaning from society rather than from its intended purpose. For example, when we say profanity is using curse words, of which using profanity isn't necessarily cursing anyone, one can curse without the use of profanity, like the video pointed out. You can go your whole life without using a curse word, but you're actually casting curses, speaking against, you know, the life of people, speaking harm on people. There's actually times where I've heard where people have prayed to the Most High for bad things to happen to others. Right?
Well, I mean, you actually have lots of examples of that in Psalms. I mean, you read Psalm 35, and it's like, let him fall into a pit, you know, let him not be brought out, you know, let his armor fail him and he get pierced with the arrows and stuff, you know, like,
right? So there's a clear difference between the ancient and biblical understanding of curse and the modern understanding of curse. And there's also a difference between the ancient swearing and modern swearing. So let's go to Matthew 5:33-37. It says, again, ye have heard that it hath been said by them of old time, thou shalt not forswear thyself, but shalt perform unto the Most High thine oaths. See, we see that word oaths again. We just saw oaths in the secular understanding, right? Spitting vow oaths. So let's go back. And then down here, look, it says utter oaths. I missed that. I didn't even see that. Oh, here too, oath. So let's go to the scriptures. It says, you know, perform unto the Most High thine oaths. But it says, but I say unto you, swear not at all. So when you read that at face value and you're not reading it in context or looking into it at all, you're looking at like, okay, say it says swear not at all, so I'm not supposed to cuss. But swearing, what the Bible is talking about, is not what we call swear words. It's not what the common modern understanding of swear is. But let's keep reading.
Actually, if you go into, just a little side note, if you go into the Hebrew Matthew, it says swear not falsely, right? Because there was this tradition that as long as you didn't swear by the name of Elohim, then you didn't have to actually do it, right? But lots of times through the Torah, it says you're supposed to swear and you're supposed to perform your oaths, just like this says. So, but it's not talking about swear words, right? So, just a little side note there.
Absolutely. It says, swear not at all, neither by heaven, for it is Elohim's throne, nor by the earth, for it is his footstool, neither by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. Neither shalt thou swear by thy head, because thou canst not make one hair white or black. But let your communication be yea, yea, nay, nay. For whatsoever is more than these cometh of evil. So what he's saying here is you ain't supposed to swear at all, or like Professor S highlighted falsely, right? But it's telling you don't swear by heaven, because that's not yours. That's the Most High's. Don't swear by earth, because it's the Most High's, or by Jerusalem, because it's the Most High's, but it says it's the city of the great king, right? So it's Hamashiach's, or the lineage of David. So it's David's in a sense, right? You can't swear by none of these things because you don't own any of these things. You don't control any of these things, right? Neither thou swear by thy head. And he said, you can't even swear by your own head because you don't have the power, right, to make one of your hairs white or black, right? And this is we're not getting into dyeing and all of that, so y'all don't need to go there. But you don't have the power to just turn your hair color, right? You don't have that type of power, so you can't even swear on your own head. He said, but let your communication be yea, yet your yes be yes, and your no be no. For anything else outside of this cometh of evil. Now, when you understand this last verse right here, especially from the information that was brought forth by Professor S, right? It makes sense. It makes total sense. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. Anything outside of that, or if you're trying to swear and you just say, well, if I'm not swearing by the Most High, then I'm good. No.
Well, what's really being said is that you're automatically, by implication, everything you say is actually an oath to Elohim. So you just need to be, watch out for that. And you should mean whatever you say. Like if you say yes, you should mean yes. And if you say no, you should mean no,
Yep. Thou shalt not forswear thyself, but shalt perform unto the Most High thine oaths, right? So everything that you're supposed to be, promising specifically, you're supposed to be promising the Most High those things. Mm-hmm. I promise that I'm going to be obedient. I promise that I'm going to love you. I promise that I'm going to keep your word. I promise that I'm going to keep your Torah. I promise I'm going to love my neighbor, right? Everything else outside of those things, that's why a lot of times you might hear somebody say, if you're like, hey, are you going to be able to make it over to the house to play, video games or come to Shabbat talk? And they say Most High willing. That's them acknowledging that they don't have control over what happens. It's their intent to make it. But if the Most High wills it, then they'll be there. If he doesn't, then they won't be there, right? So it's alleviating them trying to control or be in control of whatever it is. They're giving it to the Most High, right? They're performing that oath unto the Most High. They're not promising like, hey, I promise you I'm gonna be there and I'm gonna be on time. You can't control traffic. You can't control if a dog or a deer jump out in front of your car. You can't control if somebody hits you, right? So your intent is to be there and be on time, but you can't control none of that. So you say, Most High willing, or, if it be the will of the Most High, you give that to the Most High instead of just speaking out your side because you can't control nothing. Now let's look at the dictionary on this one. Swear. It said, number one says, make a solemn statement or promise, undertaking to do something or affirming that something is the case, right? It says, Maria made me swear I would never tell anyone, right? That is swearing. That's not using profanity. Ain't nothing in here about saying a word and calling somebody a word or using a specific word in a sentence that's considered bad. It doesn't have nothing to do with this. Number two, now here we're going to get into like the profanity aspects, but even this has biblical connotations to it. It says use language of a kind regarded as coarse. We see that word coarse again, just like we saw it in the other one. Blasphemous, same here, or otherwise unacceptable in polite or formal speech in order to express anger or other strong emotion. And again, I go back to this right here. It says formal speech. Well, what is formal speech? Doesn't this depend on the society that you're in? Goes back to profanity in itself is a societal construct. It is a societal construct, right? Everybody here on this panel, those on Facebook and YouTube that's tuned in and watching, we all understand a man is supposed to be with a woman, not a man, and a woman is supposed to be with a man, not a woman. A woman and a woman and a man is not correct. But in society, it's been accepted. So we see every day on TV, and media and all of this stuff, they're pushing these agendas that's clearly wrong. But if society accepts it, society will deem it as good. That's profane in itself. That's true profanity, right? Because they're calling good evil and they're calling evil good. Because if you stand on the word and you say that is not the case, a man should be with a woman, in the story. Now you're homophobic. Now you're all of these other things, right? That's actually closer to what's been going on. Then it says, as a noun, informal, it says a word regarded as coarse, blasphemous, or otherwise unacceptable in polite speech. A swear word. See how they added it in there? A swear word. How is this a swear word? How is saying ass anywhere being blasphemous towards the Most High? When ass literally means donkey. So if I say donkey, am I being blasphemous? Is that unacceptable or impolite speech? And again, polite or formal speech is based on the context of the society in which you're using it. Right? You go to Russia, they use a lot of what's called swear words and profanity a lot more there than they do here. You go to Russia and you say some things, that's normal speech there. They don't take offense. So their societal construct wouldn't consider certain words as unacceptable. The biblical form of swear is to make an oath. The modern form of swear is to say a word that is considered by societal standards bad. Sometimes even in the modern sense, we use the biblical form of swear. For example, when we say, I swear to the God word, or I swear on my mother's life, or I am telling you the truth, I swear. Or a more urban slang version, I put that on, I put that on my mom, I put that on everything, whatever the case may be. So even in a modern sense, we still understand that we still understand the biblical form of the true meaning of the word swear. These two distinct forms of swear are not the same and thus cannot be categorized as such. We are not to make oaths as the scripture explicitly stated because we are not in control over anything. Only the Most High. Part 7, right? Why children shouldn't use profanity. I'm going to watch this last video. It's a quick video. Let me put this up.
On the car. Monkey on the car. Fuck off.
Oh no. Did that boy just curse? Can't do that. Am I right, Christians? It's time we had a talk about cursing and swearing. The Bible very clearly says that you cannot curse and you cannot swear. But what is cursing and what is swearing? A curse is any expressed wish that some form of adversity or misfortune will befall or attach to one or more persons, or a prayer or invocation for harm or injury to come upon someone. And why are we not supposed to curse? Because what we say matters. What we say with our mouth comes out of our heart. And the universe is basically like Alexa. It is listening to us and is going to react based on what we believe and what we say. I hear Christians all the time curse their children. Sure, they don't say shit, but they'll say to their child, "You'll never amount to anything." Or, "You're stupid?" Jesus says not to call anybody stupid. That probably applies to your children. And if you speak a cursing of stupidity over your child, Christians need to understand that Jesus was telling us about how the universe works. Most Christians live in this religious churchianity version of what Jesus said. Psalms 109:17, he loved to curse. Let curses come upon him. The guy cursed, he gets curses. Do you see how this actually works? James 3:10, from the same mouth come blessings and cursing. So on one hand you have blessings, I bless you, I hope well for you, or cursings, I hate you, I want evil for you. Cursing is basically the opposite of blessing. Bless people, don't curse them. Romans 12:14, bless those who persecute you, bless, and do not curse them. Ephesians 4:29, let no corrupting talk come out of your mouths. Another thing we are not to do is have corrupt communication. Corrupt communication like, the media. Basically, the Bible says, don't be the media. This is what Jesus said about swearing. Matthew 5:34. But I tell you, do not swear an oath at all. An oath, a promise. Your mouth writing checks that you can't cash. Let your yeses be yes and your no's be no. You don't need to swear that this thing's going to happen, that you're going to do this or do that. I swear to God, I swear by heaven. Jesus says not to do that. When you swear, you are saying that your will be done. God's will be done. So we don't swear. And is swearing saying shit? No. It's deeper than that. Watch what you say, in particular with how your will affects other people. We have to be wise, not religious.
You know, I'm reminded of The Tongue, A Creative Force by Charles Capps. Because, you know, very oftentimes we do, you know, as he said in that example, we actually put curses on people by saying things to them, you know. Yep. We say, oh, you're just unfortunate, you're just unlucky, right? That's something that affects them, you know. And if people hear that enough times, their subconscious mind picks it up and makes it happen, you know. But on the reverse end, if we were to bless people and say, oh, you're blessed with great luck, you know, you're blessed with so many good things happening to you, abundance and prosperity and all this kind of stuff, then that also affects them, you know.
Yep, absolutely.
And when we say that stuff to ourselves, you know, I mean, some people go and look in the mirror and say, dang, I look like garbage, you know, I'm ugly, I don't like the way my nose is, or whatever the case is. What they're actually doing, unbeknownst to them, is they're cursing themselves. You know?
Absolutely. So yeah, these brothers was cooking. And again, not to take anything away from the first video that we watched, okay? And like the scriptures that they used and the perspective that they was coming from, I totally and 100% understand that perspective, right? But y'all hear me speak about this every week. But when you look at the totality of scripture, the totality of the situation, what is the most, like which side is the most of scripture pointing to? Is it pointing to the specific words that are being said, or is it pointing to the intent behind those words? So why children shouldn't use profanity? If the use of profanity isn't inherently evil, sinful, or bad, then why shouldn't we let our children use it? Proverbs 22:6, train up a child in the way that he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Ultimately, it's the parents' decision whether they permit their children to use profanity or not, since it's not inherently evil, sinful, or bad. But there are several reasons why children using profanity can be harmful. Number one, and this isn't an all-exhaustive list, this is just what I could come up with on short notice, right? So if it's something that you think of or come up with, feel free to share or put it in the chat. I'm not saying all of this is everything. But number one, it is more difficult for children to discern the intent behind their words. The child could unintentionally use profanity incorrectly to cause harm. They can also fail to regulate their emotions and use profanity intentionally to cause harm, right? So, you know, you have that level of discernment that you get when you're an adult, when you've had life experience, when you've been able to understand the linguistic nature of language, right? The use of certain words and, you know, whether they be considered profanity or not, right? So you can understand someone else's intent when they're talking to you. If they use a cuss word, you don't take offense to it because you know that they didn't mean it like that. But if you don't have that discernment, right, you can take it as offensive and then just lash out. And they didn't even mean anything by it, but now you're responding to it. But for in the example of children, right, they have to grow up and learn that before that. Because if you put them into that realm of using profanity too early, it can be detrimental to their growth. Number two, profanity is not a required form of speech. It is complementary, right? It's not mandatory that those specific words are used or to be used, right? A child does not have to learn or understand profanity to live a productive life, right? Like Sister Kaylee said earlier today, all the way up until like her first couple years of high school, she didn't curse. She didn't have to curse. She didn't want to curse. And then when she did decide to curse, it was really more so to fit in. And even when she was doing it to fit in, she didn't feel right. Right? That's just it's the fact of the matter. You don't have to use profanity. It's optional. Okay? But for a child, it's hard for them to determine what's optional and what's mandatory. Especially if they're hearing it over and over and over again, or you just permit them to use it. A child can learn to discern sarcasm without the use of profanity to communicate. You can be sarcastic without ever using a so-called bad word, right? But when you're dealing with children and they're sponges in the way that they learn and understand the world around them, that can really impact how they actually understand the meaning of that word and when it's not appropriate to use that word. Number 3, it can extremely limit their communication skills. Y'all hit on this really good. Ebony and Sister Kaylee and I think even Sister Ava mentioned on it, right? It can use the child, it can cause the child to have a limited vocabulary. The child could struggle to understand others with a more advanced vocabulary. Okay. It's echoing. Sorry, Ebony walked past with the phone and it's echoing a little bit. No, but yeah, so it can limit their communication skills. We have to adequately learn how to communicate before adding little extra things on there, right? Like if you think about a sport, what does the sport teach you the most? What's most important with any sport? Fundamentals, right? All the other fancy trick shots and other things that you can do and learn, they can be complementary and help you. But if you are fundamentally sound, there's people who are never flashy. They're fundamentally sound and everything, and they become professional athletes based off that alone, right? So you want to have a firm foundation of fundamentals when you're talking about your communication and your vocabulary, and jumping into profanity too early can mess that up. Number 4, it can limit the child's overall success in life. We must operate in this world, and although the use of profanity is a societal construct, society has deemed certain words inappropriate, and thus, to present a professional demeanor, the use of profanity in a professional setting is heavily frowned upon. You walk into a boardroom where you got the board of the entire company and maybe other CEOs from other companies coming to see a presentation, and you just cussing up a storm in there, even though curse words in themselves aren't bad. But that is a professional setting. Even if some of the board members are your buddies from work, and y'all probably go out and get drinks and y'all cuss and do all stuff off the clock. But even they who know you and know that you aren't like that will look at you crazy in that setting, right? A child who grows up using profanity can lack the linguistic aptitude to be able to hold a professional conversation or communicate professionally when interviewing for a job or giving a presentation, which will limit their professional opportunities, right? Doors open when you are professional. When you're not professional, doors close, right? Now, ultimately, whatever's meant for you is going to be meant for you because the Most High dictates those things. But we can be a hindrance to ourselves when we don't understand, like Ebony said earlier, there's a time and a place for everything, right? And whether profanity is good or bad, if society says that it's bad and you're in a societal environment in that moment, which you're in a professional interview, you're trying to get a job, and they ask you questions and you can't put together a whole sentence without using a cuss word, you're going to have a problem. You're going to have a real hard time getting that job. Schools, businesses, and other establishments have rules and policies against the use of profanity, so the child can grow up and be susceptible to an enlarged amount of disciplinary action against them for their use of profanity. If the school says you're not supposed to use profanity, and even though you allow your kid to use it in the home, they go to school and start using it, you're going to start seeing phone calls come home, notes come home, the kid getting detention, gets suspended, ultimately could get expelled because they continue to break that rule, right? But if they're using profanity too freely, too early, they don't have that embedded filter, right? Because they're still immature, they're still kids.
Yeah, so, and then it also hampers their development in actual communication and actual vocabulary, because they don't have to use vocabulary to communicate their ideas. They just use those few words. You know, it hampers their ability to properly communicate concepts and things.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
my sister works with kids, like so she's like a director, and she works with kids, and is that every other word that comes out of her mouth like a swear word, and when she confronts someone and say stop swearing, like, sorry, I can't help it, like I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, they can't help it because they don't know what else to say. And what it does is, when you come across someone, even if the person is actually like intelligent, but you come across someone who's cussing every other word, it makes them sound like an ignoramus. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like, man, don't you have a bigger vocabulary than that? You know what I mean?
Yep, absolutely. And then adult language is for adults. Number 5, if profanity requires a certain level of linguistic knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, then these things take time and experience to acquire. A child simply doesn't have the amount of experience to use profanity correctly. And then, if one deems profanity only suitable for adults to use, then children should not use it, plain and simple. It's just that simple, right? Just that simple. But something I want y'all to keep in mind, like especially talking about like what was it at? No, I think it was something that one of the brothers just said. It came to mind, like, you guys, if you ever came to my house, right? And I use profanity, but what you'll also find is our kids don't really cuss like that. Obviously, sometimes on occasion, some things will slip out, but they really don't cuss like that. But what you'll find is them saying certain things, but they'll try to use those euphemisms, or you'll hear us. If you come to our house, you will hear us correcting our children in the regards, like they might say something like, "Oh, I don't like you," or "I can't stand you," and we'll get on their case. And in another home, "I don't like you" or "I can't stand you" would be completely acceptable. But if they use a cuss word, then the parent would get on the kid's case. But here we understand the intent, right? And so the intent is what's important. And so when we hear those types of things, we get on our kids and we stress the importance of your intentions matter, right? Not and obviously they're being children. We don't say that cursing is okay for them, but not because it's sinful, but because they're not old enough yet. They need to, like my wife said earlier, you need to develop a thorough vocabulary, right? You need to get a certain level of maturity, both physical maturity, emotional maturity, and spiritual maturity before you can even try to do that. You need to understand the fundamentals. You need to learn how to dribble the basketball up and down before you sit over here trying to do 360 windmill layups and stuff like that, right? You got to stick to the fundamentals. But it's also important about the intent. And with our kids, they're all related. So that's your brother, that's your sister. You're supposed to love your brother and your sister. You're supposed to uplift your brother and your sister. I don't want to hear language coming from y'all talking about y'all don't like each other, or you want to do something to your brother or your sister or anything like that, right? That's what we have an issue with, right? And in other situations, because there's no cussing being done, that's not a problem for them, right? But it's important to instill these lessons in your kids early on. And then this last point in regards to kids and profanity is it's kind of a note to everybody and even to ourselves, because we fall short in this regard too. Because like I said, I've used profanity around my kids. It says, keep in mind, if you deem profanity unsuitable for children, whether or not you agree with it or not, you should consider limiting your personal use of profanity around your children, especially when you are addressing them directly. Children learn from their parents' instruction large in part from what they do rather than what they say. And, my wife told me this earlier today. They listen, they learn from what you do, not what you say. You can tell them, even if you think cursing is bad, you can say cursing is bad, cursing is bad. But if you're every single day cussing around them or cursing at them, they're going to do what they see you doing, not what you're telling them to do. Right?
Yeah, growing, can you hear me?
Yes.
Growing up, you know, it's like I remember hearing family members that don't smoke cigarettes, don't smoke cigarettes, don't smoke cigarettes. And they would say it to everybody. Like for me, that was never an issue because I knew I was never going to smoke cigarettes. But, you know, I see a lot of families, they'll tell their kids, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. But when they turn 18, they find out the kids are doing it and they go, well, I mean, at least you're 18. Like, what did you expect? Kids, that whole saying that a lot of us grew up with, you know, we would hear some of our parents say, I didn't hear this, but, you know, I heard friends' parents say it, you know, don't do as I do as I tell you to do. But that's just not the way people learn. Everybody learns by watching and then they do. I don't care what it is. I don't care if you're at a job. I don't care if you're at church. I don't care if it's in your home and it's with your kids. People will watch what you do, and that is how they learn to do whatever it is you're trying to teach them. Even down to how people treat you. If someone is watching someone else treat you disrespectfully and you don't put that person in their place, what are they going to do? They're going to say, okay, well, I can treat them the same way.
Yep.
And then when they snap on you, you go, oh, wait a second, but you let so-and-so, because the reality is the one individual is watching another. Kids learn by watching, and then they will do. It has nothing to do with what you tell them to do. You can threaten them all you want, but when they become adults, the tree will bear its fruit.
Yep. So being an example of exhibiting a professional vocabulary around your children can limit their exposure to profanity and encourage them to develop a healthy vocabulary themselves. This is regardless if they grow up to use profanity in their adulthood, at which point they have already been equipped with the foundation to discern when to use it. It's supposed to be use it to sue it. They're going to sue the word. No, I'm just kidding. So that's it. Now, you know me, you got to get some scriptural breakdown, right? And I'm going to go through these fairly quickly because it's a lot of information to get over. But if anybody wants me to send them this breakdown, this study, I'm more than happy to do so. Part 8, scriptural breakdown. Let's get to the meat of the matter, the Bible. Breaking down the scriptures everyone is waiting for. Okay, Colossians 3:8. But now ye also put off all these: anger, wrath, malice, blasphemy, filthy communication out of your mouth. Is this talking about cursing or the use of profanity? Right? When you look into the breakdown of it in the Greek, it's translated as abusive speech, but it is from the Greek word that means abusive language. I don't know how to pronounce that word, so I'm not even going to try, but it's Strong's Concordance number 148. Abusive language, filthy speech, foul language in its usage, right? And we are in Colossians 3:8. Okay, so let's look down. Foul speaking, low and obscene speech, shameful speaking, Colossians 3:8. So the context that is being used in association with Colossians 3:8 is shameful speaking, foul speaking, low and obscene speech, filthy communication, obscene speech. This has nothing to do with a specific word being used. And we understand what society accepts and what society considers is irrelevant, because that's not what the scriptures say. So we got to understand everything from a biblical perspective, a biblical context. Ephesians 4:29. Let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good to the use of edifying, that it may minister grace unto the hearers. So even in the context of this verse by itself, if you're focusing on corrupt communication and you're associating that with using profanity, keep reading. Keep reading. It says, but that which is good for the use of edifying. We're supposed to edify one another. We're supposed to minister grace unto the people who hear us speak, right? And then let's look at the word. So unwholesome is what it's translated into in the NASB, but it's Strong's Concordance 4550, the Greek word for rotten or worthless. And the usage is rotten, useless, corrupt, depraved, right? And we're reading Ephesians 4:29. So let's scroll down. It falls in category number 2, corrupt by age and no longer fit for use, worn out, of poor quality, bad, unfit for use, worthless, corrupt, right? But then if you go down to the one that specifically is dealing with Ephesians 4:29, it just says bad, right? But what's bad? Is it what society says is bad, or is it what the Bible says is bad? Bad, corrupt. You see it here again, bad and corrupt. Matthew 12:36-37, he says, but I say unto you that every idle word that men shall speak, they shall give account thereof in the day of judgment. For by thy words thou shalt be justified, and by thy words thou shalt be condemned. Right? So we got a couple different words here. But we're talking about every idle word. That's careless. Strong's Concordance 692, argos, which means inactive or idle. And then its usages is idle, lazy, thoughtless, unprofitable, or injurious. Right? And we are in Matthew 12:36-37. So let's scroll down to where we find it at. C, of things from which no profit is derived. No profit, no edification, no positivity. Although they can and ought to be productive as of fields, trees, gold, and silver, right? It says unprofitable by litotes, equivalent to pernicious, Matthew 12:36, right? Barren, idle, slow, lazy, useless, barren, idle, slow. It's not talking about a specific word that society calls as bad. It's saying nothing that comes out of your mouth should not be unprofitable. It shouldn't be idle. It shouldn't be useless or worthless. Everything that you say should have meaning or good intent behind it. Matthew 15:10-11. And he called the multitude and said unto them, hear and understand. Not that which goeth into the mouth defileth the man, but that which cometh out of the mouth, this defileth the man. So is this saying that it's not what goes into the mouth that defiles a man, but that which is curse words or profanity that comes out the mouth that defiles the man? It's not the words. Now, words do come out of the mouth, but you got to understand this in context, right? Out of the mouth, 4750, this is just the Greek word stoma, and it just means the mouth. But it also means speech, eloquence in speech, and the point of a sword. And since the thoughts of man's soul find verbal utterance by his mouth, the heart or soul and the mouth are distinguished. Matthew 12:34 and Matthew 15:8. So it's talking about what's coming out of the mouth. It's talking about the heart of the soul. It's talking about what's intent, that person's intent, the heart and the soul. If you have a corrupt nature within your heart, within your soul, within the man, as the verse is talking about, right? Coming out of the man. If a man has a corrupt heart, then the things that he speaks is going to be corrupt. He's not corrupt because of a specific word that he's uttering. It's the impact, the intent behind what he's saying. And it mentioned Matthew 15:8. I think this is the one, because this was the scripture was Matthew 15:10-11, but this mentions Matthew 15:8. But when you look at Matthew 15:8, it says, "This people draweth nigh unto me with their mouth, and honoreth me with their lips, but their heart is far from me." Right? So the focus or the impact of what it's saying is talking about the intent. It's talking about the intent. Probably mouth, probably strengthened from a presumed derivative of the base of tomotorus, the mouth as if gashed in the face by implication, language and its relations. Figuratively, an opening in the earth, specifically the frontal edge of a weapon, edge, face, mouth. James 3:10, out of the same mouth proceedeth blessing and cursing. My brethren, these things ought not so to be, right? We covered this earlier, right? But let's look at the biblical breakdown of the word cursing. Cursing and it's translated as cursing, comes from 2671, katara, which means a curse. And it means the usage is cursing, a curse, meeting a doomed one. Properly, what has to go down, right, in regards to penalties being received due to condemnation. For example, the penalty curse that results when Elohim himself curses or condemns something. We're talking about condemnation here. This has nothing to do with using a specific word, because Elohim don't just condemn us with one specific word. He tells us what we did. Because you have not kept my laws, because you have worshiped idols, because you have done this, now this is gonna happen to you. Right? He's explaining himself. Accursed, curse, cursed, cursing. Right? And what would you just read? James 3:10. Let's scroll down. Chiefly for an execration, imprecation, curse, opposed to being cursed, which see James 3:10. Due to condemnation. If saying the word as is condemning someone to some type of condemnation, then I don't know what's going on, right? Ephesians 5:4, neither filthiness, nor foolish talking, nor jesting, which are not convenient, but rather giving of thanks. Okay, here you also see the same thing echoed. I didn't make this bold, but look at this. But rather giving of thanks. It says, don't deal with none of this nonsense, but rather the giving of thanks. What is the giving of thanks? That's something that's coming from within you. That's intent. That's showing gratefulness. That's showing thankfulness, right? That's edifying someone else so that they can feel grateful, or maybe blessing them so that they feel grateful, right? Being that example of Elohim, being that example of Messiah. But we're not supposed to deal with filthiness, nor foolish talking, nor jesting. Okay, so let's look at where it says, and there must be no filthiness. Well, that's Strong's Concordance 151. That means baseness. And then it says, and silly talk, or foolish talking, because these are in KJV. This is NASB. Silly talk is 3473. Foolish talking, and then nor jesting, and this is coarse jesting. And we know the word coarse is something that's rough, right? Something that's intended to be a little bit more harsh, right? It's 2160. Ready with coarse jesting. Are not fitting to be fit, to be proper, right? It says are not convenient, but then rather the giving of thanks. So let's look at it. The first one, Strong's 151, baseness, dishonor, Ephesians 5:4. It's saying as dishonoring somebody. Now, if I call them an ass, now now my intent is to insult them or to bring them dishonor. But if I just say ass in general, or shit in general, that's not dishonoring anyone, right? Strong's 3473. Foolish talking, Ephesians 5:4. What is foolish talking? It's literally the opposite of speaking with wisdom. So if you're not operating in wisdom when you speak, then you're considered doing foolish talking. So it's if you focus on the word, you're going to miss the point, because it's not the word that you use that's foolish. It's what you say that can be foolish. You can say something without using any type of profanity and still be using foolish talking. Strong's 2160. In a bad sense, scurrility, ribaldry, low jesting, in which there is some acuteness, Ephesians 5:4. Right? It also talks about being facetious, pleasantry, humor, right? Basically unnecessary joking. You ever been around somebody that just they joke about everything? They can never take anything serious, and it just destroys whatever the vibe is, right? Well, what if we come together as believers and we talking about scripture and somebody's just consistently coming with jokes like nonstop, right? And there's nothing wrong with humor, right? But when you consistently come with jokes, where's there room for edification? Where is there room for uplifting? If you're joking all the time, right? And then last one, 433, unbecoming, discreditable. Again, is using a specific word, discrediting anyone else, unless you address your words towards that individual. And I can discredit someone without using a specific word that's deemed profanity. Without ever using a cuss word, I can discredit somebody. I can act unbecoming of myself without ever having to use a specific word. James 3, 6-8. But the tongue is a fire, a world of iniquity. So is the tongue among our members, that it defileth the whole body, and setteth on fire the course of nature, and it is set on fire of hell. For every kind of beasts and of birds and of serpents and of things in the sea is tamed, and hath been tamed of mankind. But the tongue can no man tame. It is unruly. It is an unruly evil, full of deadly poison. So you read this and you like, yeah, man, we ain't supposed to be cussing. Look at all of this stuff. The tongue is a fire. It's burning everything up. It can defile the whole body. We don't, as a body of Christ, a body of believers, we ain't supposed to be using these words. If we use these words, it can defile the whole body of the congregation. It can't be tamed. All these animals can be tamed, but the tongue can't be tamed. The tongue is evil, and it got poison in it. See, we supposed to keep away from these curse words. But let's look into what's talking about. Let's see. Fire. 442 or 44:42. Partly by reason of the fiery spirit which governs it, partly by reason of the destructive power it exercises. James 3 and 6. It ain't say nothing about a specific word. It's talking about the spirit. What's coming from you? What spirit are you operating in? Are you operating in edification, or are you operating in destruction? Right? And has been tamed. That's 1150, to tame. Let's look at it. English tame. It says common from Homer down, to tame, to restrain, or to curb. James 3 and 8. That's just to restrain it, to control it, to keep it. Right? Evil. Let's talk about evil, because it said it was evil, right? Evil is 2556. Troublesome, injurious, pernicious, destructive, baneful, neuter, and evil, that which injures, and evil, that which injures. Again, it's not about the words you say, it's about the intention. Are you trying to be troublesome? Are you trying to injure or harm the person you're dealing with? Are you trying to be pernicious? Are you trying to be destructive? And then it calls it poison. Well, that's 24:47. Okay. Number one, it falls into the number one category, poison. It says of animals, and it says the poison of asps is under their lips, spoken of men, given to reveling and culminating in their and thereby injuring others. By the same figure, James 3 and 8. Right? So it's under their lips, spoken of men, what it says, given to reveling and culminating and thereby injuring others. Does that sound like using a specific word that society says is a bad word? Or does that sound like using a word with an intent to injure or to cause harm? Right? Even the Bible, it speaks about a certain thing. So when that first video said, it is abundantly clear in the Bible that we're not supposed to use cuss words, I have to disagree. Respectfully. James 1 and 26, it says, if any man among you seem to be religious, and bridleth not his tongue, but deceiveth his own heart, this man's religion is vain. Okay, well, let's talk about religion for a second, right? So if you're in the church and you're cussing, the religion is in vain because you're using these cuss words. Well, let's look. Let's check it out. Himself to be religious. The word for religious is 2357. Threscos or threskos. It says refers probably to a careful observance of religious restrictions, religious probably in a limited sense, or just to be devout, right? If you're considered devout in whatever belief you got, that's where it's coming from, right? According to the Greek breakdown. But let's check it out. It says fearing or worshiping Elohim, religious, trembling, fearful, right? To adhere to, be a votary of, in this James 1:26. Okay, so if you're religious, you're considered devout. You're considered to be fearing the Most High. And when you fear the Most High, it's talking about being obedient to him, right? Trembling in fear, but it's a good trembling, right? Being religious, to adhere to his law, statutes, and commandments, and yet does not bridle, to lead with a bridle. Bridle means to guide. So does not guide their tongue, right? And then it says tropically, to bridle, to hold in check, to restrain. So if you can't hold your own tongue and you consider yourself devout, then your devoutness is in vain. Is it because you couldn't hold your tongue and it said a specific word? Or is it you couldn't hold your tongue and you said something that was destructive, right? Or evil towards your brother or your sister? Or maybe you said something that was destructive in general and it wasn't pointed at anyone in specifics, but they received it that way, right? Because we also have to be mindful of the words that we use around other people, like Sister Kaylee said earlier today, right? And then in his own heart 2588, it's the Greek word cardia. The heart, mind, character, inner self, will, intention, center. What? This sounds like everything I just been talking about. Let's continue reading. Cardia, heart, the affective center of our being and the capacity of moral preference, volitional desire, and choice, right? It says, but never referring to the literal physical pump that drives the blood, that is heart, is only used figuratively, both in the Old Testament and the New Testament. So when it's talking about what's in a man's heart comes out of his mouth, it's talking about his mind, his character, his inner self, his will, his intention, the center of his essence of who he is. That's what comes out of the mouth. So if somebody says ass, that doesn't mean that all of this right here that's a part of them is corrupt. No. Proverbs 21:23. Whoso keepeth his mouth and his tongue keepeth his soul from troubles. We see it again, but let's look into these words. He who guards, to keep watch or to preserve, Strong's 8104, shamar, to keep watch and preserve. Okay, well, what is he preserving? What is he keeping watch of? His mouth. His mouth is breakdown much oftener as organ of speech of man, right? Guards, preserves, Proverbs 13:3 and Proverbs 21:23. This is the one we're looking at, right? His tongue. Tongue is usually as an organ of speech, both good and bad, especially Psalms, Proverbs often compare Proverbs 21:23. So usually as an organ of speech. So his organ of speech. And then the verse that said his soul is a soul, living being, life, self, person, desire, passion, appetite, emotion. That's nefesh. That's the Hebrew word nefesh. Strong's 53:15. And then from troubles is straits or distress. That's Strong's 68:69, sarah. And it can mean affliction, anguish, distress. Distress is trouble or troubles. So when you are keeping or you're guarding, right, the things that you say, you control your tongue, you keep your soul from dealing with those types of issues, falling into distress or any type of trouble. 2 Timothy 2:16, but shun profane and vain babblings, for they will increase unto more ungodliness. We see that word profane, that root word of profanity of this whole topic, right? Profane, it just means translated to worldly. It says permitted to be trodden, by implication, unhallowed. Strong's 952. Bibelos, right? Godless person, profane, worldly. Profane. When you're talking about 2 Timothy 2:16, it says equivalent to, for example, unhallowed or common, right? What is considered unhallowed or common during the time when this verse was written or this verse was given, right? What's considered unhallowed during that time? What's considered vain babblings during that time? Let's look and see what vain babblings mean. Vain babblings means empty chatter. It's translated as empty chatter. The word is empty talk, 2757, right? Let's come down to this. Uttering emptiness, right? 2 Timothy 2:16, it says empty discussion of vain and useless matters, babbling. 2 Timothy 2:16. You ever been around somebody that was just talking and talking and talking and they weren't saying shit? Just nothing edifying, nothing inspiring, nothing giving any type of necessary information. They just talk to talk. They just talking to hear themselves talk. The Bible speaks against that for sure. Chatter, empty talk, fruitless discussion, being in vain. Psalm 19:14, let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Adonai, my strength and my redeemer. Meditation. And the meditation is what is translated into 1902, resounding music, meditation, musing. The Strong's Concordance identifies verse 14 as verse 15 because it begins its verse count at 0 rather than 1, because it threw me off at first. I'm like, I see Psalms 19:14, but when I look into the Strong's Concordance, it does mention it, but it mentions it as 19:15, so it threw me off. But then when I typed in Psalm 19:15 and pulled it up, it started at verse 0. So verse 1 in the KJV is verse 0 in certain versions. So that's what made it verse 14. So when it says verse 15, it's actually talking about this verse right here, just to give that disclaimer, because if this throws you off, that's the reason why it threw you off, because it threw me off too. But it means resounding music, meditation, or musing. Hagion, meditation, resounding music, whispering. Resounding music, meditation, musing, Psalm 19:15 or 19:14, right? Meditation, musing, Psalm 19:14 or 15. The words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart. And this also can be in bad sense. The opposite of it is talking about plotting. So if the bad sense of what this is talking about is plotting, the good sense is the opposite of plotting, right? When you intentionally, see that word intention again? When you intentionally provide giving praise, worship, and esteem to Abba, or to Father, to our Father, our Heavenly Father, right? But the opposite of that is plotting. Is using a specific curse word plotting? No, it's all about the intent. Device, Hagion, meditation, solemn sound, meditation. Psalms 141:3, set a watch, O Adonai, before my mouth, keep the door of my lips. You might look at this and be like, okay, he talking about I need help trying not to curse, right? So, man, set a watch, Father. Set a watch before my mouth. Let me watch my mouth. Can you help me watch my mouth? I don't want to curse no more. Keep the door of my lips, right? Close the door. Keep my lips closed, right? So let's read this verse in context. Psalms 141 verses 1 through 4. Not just reading verse 3 out of the context. Let's read it all together. It says, Adonai, I cry unto thee. Make haste unto me. Give ear unto my voice. when I cry unto thee. Let my prayer be set forth before thee as incense, and the lifting up of my hands as the evening sacrifice. So he's talking about prayer to be as incense. What do you do when you light an incense? The sweet fragrance is supposed to go up to heaven, and the Most High is supposed to smell it and be pleased, right? And then it continues and says, the lifting up of my hands as the evening sacrifice. So the lifting up of his hands is talking about being equivalent to making a sacrifice in the evening that the priest would do to the Most High, as giving reverence, right? Then it says, set a watch, O Adonai, before my mouth. Keep the door of my lips. Then what? Verse 4 says, incline not my heart to any evil thing, to practice wicked works with men that work iniquity, and let me not eat of their dainties. So it says, incline not my heart. We just covered heart, didn't we? What is heart? Is it ever talking about the beating, pumping muscle that pumps blood through your body? Or is it talking about your mind, your soul, yourself, your essence, who you are, the core of who you are, right? He says, let not the core of everything, the core of me, the essence of me, the mind of me, to any evil thing. And we know what evil is, right? So is this talking about cuss words when you read it in context? Context is important. Proverbs 4:24. Put away thee a froward mouth, and perverse lips put far from thee. They look at perverse lips like, see, there you go. That you're using them cuss words. If you say something nasty, a froward mouth. Let's look at froward mouth. It means from you a deceitful. Strong's Concordance 61:43 means crookedness. I'm not going to try to pronounce that word. Deceitful and perverse. Crookedness of the mouth. Right? So it's talking about crookedness, being deceitful. Now let's look at the other one. Devious. Deviation, crookedness. This one is Lazuth, 3891. Deviation, crookedness. Proverbs 4:24. Perverse. Perverseness. Perverse. Can I say to my sisters on the stream, right? Without ever using any specific type of profanity or curse word, can I say some real perverse things to y'all about y'all? I can get creative and say some things, right? And it would be absolutely irresponsible, disrespectful to y'all, right? And it'll be just utterly just nasty, just disgusting, make you want to throw up, right? And I hadn't even said anything or call or use any type of profanity, because it's about, let's scroll up real quick. What did that verse say earlier? Incline not my heart to do any evil thing. Because I incline my heart not to do any evil thing, I would never want to say anything perverse to you. Now, we covered this earlier in a different aspect, but it's talking about Matthew 5:37. But let your communication be yea, yea, nay, and nay, for whatsoever is more than these cometh of evil. And we read this Matthew 5:33 through 37 earlier, right? But let's look at the breakdown of the oh no, we didn't break this one down. This is just reading context. But we got that already. We covered that one already. Psalms 34:13 and 14. Keep thy tongue from evil and thy lips from speaking guile. Depart from evil and do good. Seek peace and pursue it. Right? So if you're focusing on this part right here, you missed a key part about this verse or the next verse. Because if you focus on keeping thy tongue from evil and you associate evil with profanity, or you associate profanity with your lips speaking guile, you missed a big key part of this. Because if you kept reading, you'd have read, depart from evil and do good, seek peace and pursue it. All of these things is internally guided. Internally, you don't want to do anything evil. You want to be guided to do good. You want to seek peace with your brothers and sisters, and you want to pursue it. You want to pursue all things peaceful, goodly, and holy, not evil. But let's look at evil. Again, evil, distress, misery, injury, calamity. Right? This is Strong's Concordance 77451, Ra. Adversity, calamity, disaster, evil, harm, harmful, hurt, ruin, surely, trouble, unpleasant, wickedly, wickedness. You want to cause all of this? You keep your tongue from speaking all of this. And then guile is 4820, mirma. Guile means deceit or treachery. How many people have lied to you? How many people have betrayed you in their actions and in their speech? But they betrayed you because of their intent to betray you. Or they lied to you because of their intent to not tell you the truth. Not because of a specific word that came out of their mouth. It wasn't the word that came out of their mouth that was the deceit or the betrayal, the treachery. It was the intent. They had the intent to deceive you or to lie to you. Deceit, deceitful, deceitfully, deception, deceptive, dishonest, false, treacherous, treachery, right? So it breaks us down to treacherous lips, right? To Psalm 34:14, right there. Craft, deceitful, false, feigned, guile, treachery. Subtly. Proverbs 6:12. A naughty person, a wicked man, walketh with a froward mouth, with a perverse. Remember, we already covered this one, crookedness. But we can confirm that we already covered it with Proverbs 4:24, right? That was earlier. But now you see Proverbs 6:12 is right here. A froward mouth is a perverse mouth. Frowardly is perverse. I don't know why they translate it as frowardly when they can just say perverse and people will understand it. But there you go. So in conclusion, regardless of whether the use of profanity is acceptable or not to the individual, we cannot decide what cursing, foolish, defiling, bad, profane, evil, foolish, filthy, corrupt, idle, or wicked speech is using modern westernized social constructs. Westernized meaning on the western side of the world, over here by us. The Bible is a Hebrew book. It is coming from an Easternized or an Eastern perspective. We over here have a Western understanding, and we have created a social construct. We can't use this Western understanding or these social constructs to dictate what type of words these things are considered these things. We have to utilize the Bible as that standard, right? We must use biblical or Easternized established scriptural context to determine what this type of speech is. That involves language that predates absolutely all modern curse words and profanity, right? We earlier we looked into the history of a lot of these words that are considered profanity, and the oldest one was 900. The oldest one that we found was 900. Came in the year 900 AD. That is almost 600 years after the Bible was even put together. And when I say the Bible, I'm talking about when they culminated all of the manuscripts and the scrolls that was already in existence into the Bible. Over 600, almost 600 years later, right? So if these words did not exist back during biblical times, then what words was the Bible specifically referring to? Nowhere in the scripture is there a specific word that is forbidden or banned to be used in speech. What we do see over and over is the type of speech we are to express. But in every instance, the context refers to the intent of the message rather than the actual word used. That's why I took y'all through not only the article, but I took y'all through the breakdown of all of those scriptures, taking you to the Strong's Concordance, breaking all of those things down. The context of the scriptures of the verses is talking about the intent, not the word, not the specific word. And the words that we deem bad today as a society, they didn't even exist back in the Bible time. So we're trying to take these biblical principles and biblical concepts and apply them to modern speech that just don't make sense. Now, this is not to say that profanity cannot be used with an evil or malicious intent. Such things the Bible expressly condemns, right? So I'm not saying that using profanity, like you can't use, like it's impossible to use profanity or a cuss word with a malicious intent, right? Or to have an evil intent behind it. Yeah, you can absolutely do that. And people do every day. That is wrong. But it wasn't the necessary word that they used. It was the intent behind how they used it. But this notion of using what the world considers bad words is a secular notion in itself, which we are also instructed to refrain from. We are to live in the world and not be of the world. Understanding these concepts will help us further our own knowledge and be able to discern what is of man and what is of Elohim. Now, is this study's intent to get you to use profanity? No. Its intent is to educate you and the historical and on the historical and biblical aspects of profanity and strip away all of the man-made added conjecture or opinions that they use to control people, right? In order for you to make an educated decision regarding your speech. Whether you leave here today and still choose to use profanity or not, what is important is that you are educated. Regardless of the use of profanity or the lack thereof, we should be uplifting to each other and encouraging one another in all things. So, whether the verbiage used is on someone's restricted list or not, doesn't change. It doesn't change the fact that we are representatives of Elohim on earth. We are to be lights to the nations, and we cannot adequately accomplish that goal if we are causing harm with our speech as opposed to healing. So in closing, profanity or not, watch your mouth. Shalom, shalom. So, like I said, this ain't to try to like say that profanity is cool and it's okay to use because it's good, right? Profanity isn't inherently evil and it's not inherently good. It's there. You can use it. There's nothing in the scripture that says you can't use it. But what you need to watch is your intent behind everything that you say, right? Professor S, I can say, man, you are one of the most amazing brothers I ever met in my life, right? And that is very edifying. That's me building up and encouraging you, right? That's me giving you your flowers, giving you your kudos. And I can also say, brother, you are the most fucking amazing brother I ever met in my life. The word that I used, the profanity word that I used, is also it's not inherently bad, but in the context in which I used it, it was still edifying and uplifting, even though I used what's called a bad word, right? I can 100% guarantee you he didn't take it in a certain way. He understood the intent behind it. My intention was to uplift my brother, whether I used a word that's considered profanity or whether I used a regular word, right? And vice versa. Profanity in general is just flavor, right? You can eat food without any seasoning, or you can put a little bit of pepper on it. In some ways, the profanity can be used to try to enhance language, try to drive a point forward, try to highlight a certain aspect of what you're trying to say, trying to give additional context, right, to whatever you're trying to say or explain. And it can also be on the bad side where you're using profanity to insult, to call someone a different name other than what their name is, right? It could be used to try to categorize that individual as something that they're not, right? It can be used to amplify the already negative or malicious intent that you have inside that you're expressing towards that individual, right? But it's in itself, it's like, you know, This rock right here that my kids gave me, right? This rock ain't nothing. If I sit it on a desk, it's a paperweight. If I pick it up in my hand, it's just something that's in my hand. Now, if I take this rock and I throw it upside your head, right, it can damage you. It's a weapon at that point. But the rock itself it's not good. It's not evil. It's just a rock. Profanity, they're just words. That's all they are, right? You just got to be careful how you use them. You got to be careful where you use them. You got to be careful who's around when you use them. And you also got to be careful about how other people will perceive the way you use them, because you might be in a room with people who they might be extremely against any use of profanity. And you might be trying to minister to them. You might be trying to teach them about the scriptures. You might be trying to show them the love of Elohim, and then jokingly you let a cuss word slip out, right? That normally in a different setting with people who wouldn't be an issue. But now you're in a setting with people who that is extremely offensive to them, right? And they're looking at you a certain way, like Kaylee said earlier, right? Now that could be potentially an issue. Now you can be potentially being a stumbling block to your brother or your sister. So you just got to be careful. But in itself, the use of profanity is not a sin. So I know that was a longer thing tonight with the what you call it, the Torah portion took almost an hour. So I apologize.
It actually kind of went really well with the study itself, because talking about the blessings and the curses, and how Balaam was intended to curse Israel and ended up blessing them instead.
Absolutely. That's why I said that it would connect. It would definitely connect. I can tell you, Balak was not telling, was it Balaam, or what's his name, Balaam?
Balaam, yeah.
Yeah. Balak was not telling Balaam to go onto the top of the mountain and say, fuck you, Israel. Like, that's not what it was. He was trying to get him to literally curse, to literally cast a curse against Israel. And what is a curse? That is is a supernatural, call or a supernatural oath to try to cause harm to someone. Balak wanted to see the nation of Israel face destruction, face calamity, face all types of negative things. That's what the cursing was. It wasn't a specific word that he was using.
Yeah. It reminds me of this movie. I was trying to think of the name. I think it's Caged Animal. It's got Ving Rhames in it.
Yep.
Great movie, man. But it's like when they're sitting there doing Bible studies and he's cussing through the whole thing, and it's like, a lot of people would be offended by that and be like, oh, how could he? He's studying the Bible. How could he say those things? And it's like, no, he didn't mean it in any bad way. You know what I'm saying? He's it's just the way he talked, But great movie too.
It was a good movie. Sister Ava said, kind of like don't touch the bed from last week. Exactly. You just need to be careful of how you do it. If you make it a personal decision, right, not to cuss, that's totally fine. Nothing wrong with that, right? And that's a great point, Sister Ava, because you brought me to a nice, good point at the end. If you choose not to curse because you don't like it, you don't like the sound of it, you think it's bad, that's totally fine. You're well within your right to do it. Same thing if you think it's okay to curse, right? And you choose to use cursing or profanity in your speech. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you say that cursing is a sin because you don't like it, now you created a boundary. Remember, we talked about boundaries last week. You created a boundary, but now you could potentially get someone else to think that cursing is a sin. And now if they curse, or if they're talking and a curse word slips out, now they're condemned, or they feel that conviction because they feel like they did something that was wrong. When in actuality, the Bible, like I said, the Bible speaks nothing about profanity. It's about the intent. And that person could have just stubbed their toe and be like, shit, or damn, right? Whatever. Nothing inherently bad about that. They're just expressing the pain, right, of that toe that's throbbing right now, right? But now that can add to their, their anxiety, the negative conviction. It can cause them to stumble even more, or even that might be the straw that broke the camel's back. Maybe they were dealing with a whole bunch of stuff and feeling inadequate. Man, I can't keep this law. I can't keep that law. Man, I love the Most High, but I just keep failing. I keep failing. And then they let that cuss word slip, and they like, you know what? That's it. And then they give up and they walk, right? That can be a stumbling block to others, right? And just like that can be a stumbling block, right? If you like, ain't nothing wrong with cursing, man. The Bible encourages us to cuss. Now you're going into the opposite side of the spectrum, right? The Bible encourages us to uplift one another. You can uplift somebody, like I just did an example with Professor S. You can uplift somebody without using profanity, or even with using profanity. But I'm not going to sit here and say that using profanity is the right way to go. It's neutral.
Yeah,
These
because
words
in
are
a lot of
neutral.
settings, it would be inappropriate, even if it's a good thing. You want to sit at a formal dinner, just saying that.
Facts. Where there is no law, there is no transgression.
Mm-hmm. And we have to remember that sin is transgression of the Torah. So, yeah.
Yep. 1 John chapter 3, verse 4.
Mm-hmm.
Been drilling that in my kids' head the last.
But definitely, even people who do use bad language, you should try to limit the amount you use it, regardless. Just because you don't want to sound like an ignoramus, like you don't have a nice vocabulary. It's like Solomon Prophet was saying. It's like some pepper on food. You know what I'm saying? Some seasonings. You don't want to just have everything always bland, but you don't want to overdo it either. You put too much pepper in it, you ruin the dish. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So,
yep. Facts. And some people like their food unseasoned. But some people like
some people's taste buds are very vanilla.
And some people love seasoning, right? Like what's normal seasoning for me might make somebody eating like it just depends, right? But
well, and I don't even think it's so much like, yeah, you guys describe it as seasoning, but even when you're cooking, some dishes just are good right where they're at without the specific seasoning, whatever that, like you can't put turmeric in everything.
Yeah, right.
You just can't. You can't put cinnamon in everything. You can't. I mean, some people would beg to differ if I sit there and say you can't put pepper on everything, but truthfully, you can't. So there's a time and a place for each specific seasoning, and when you don't use it right, then it's
absolutely. And you ain't gonna have a dish where it's just only pepper.
Or like every other ingredient was a tablespoon of pepper.
Some pepper steak from like a Chinese restaurant. No, they had more.
Yeah, let me get your number one pepper with a side of pepper. Oh, and let me get some water, extra pepper on there. Hold the ice though, because I want to get all my pepper. Nah.
I want some pepper steak from Chinese.
That's how it works. But I'm gonna throw up next week's Torah portion up there again for those who may have missed it. Write it down, take a screenshot picture. Make sure you get my good side when you take a screenshot. No, I'm just kidding. And then we'll get ready to close out. Anybody got anything that they would like to add? Any revelations that you may or may not have received during this study? Maybe you believe that, profanity was a sin and now you don't, or maybe I strengthened your. Maybe you thought that profanity wasn't a sin, and then after you think it's now a sin or something like. The floor is you guys is to share your thoughts and experiences before we close it on out. Let's see. Sister Ava agreed with Ebony. That's a great analogy for sure. Sister Tess said, all praises and esteem to the Most High. This was a great message and teaching. Toda Queen, I appreciate you. All esteem be unto the King. So I wanted to do this last week, but last week that topic just came up really good at the right time, and I feel like people needed it, and so we were still able to do it this week. This week. And so I try to explain it and break it down as simple as I possibly can. I hope it was received and that it was edifying to everybody or most people. Hopefully at least one. Got my one, but at least one more, you know. But with that being said, if nobody has anything left, anything else, make sure if you like the content that you like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Comment while you're here or while you're watching it. We will respond to comments. What else we got? All praises, sis. Toda, thank you. And with that being said, family, nothing else. May the Most High bless you, keep you, camp his angels around you, so that you can watch your mouth and give you peace in the Messiah's name. Shabbat shalom, family.
Shabbat shalom, everybody.
Shabbat shalom, y'all.
Shabbat shalom.
Young David, I'll stay with the rock. I'm glad to the host with the most, no cap. Got a lot of love to show, and it with a double tap. On hearts, no space, love him all of my days. His thoughts are higher, gaining all of his ways. Made it out the mud, through the pain and the grief, like a vegan lifestyle, no beef in the streets. That's a blessing now these days. To show the Most High's love will go a long way. I'm a servant, he the light. Do this R&B thing, I'm the plug, he the light. Got all my spectacles, cause my blessings out of sight. Make it real.